Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 102.5. The game, Caroline Fenton is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. Ian is here. We have a loaded show. TD Power Hour at 3 o'clock. Turron will be here with us. Terry Crisp will be here today. Just a loaded show for a big game tonight. Let me say, though, before we get all rocking and rolling on everything and whatnot, by the way, we're also streaming on YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, Twitch. I think that's it. But let me say at 3 o'clock, we have some very important information that I have kind of teased this for a while now. But the NFL draft is coming, and I know there's going to be a lot of options for how you can listen to the draft or watch the draft or consume the draft. But I think if you're a longtime Titan fan, I think that at 3 o'clock you will want to be listening. If you're a recent Titan fan, I think 3 o'clock you'll want to be listening. Our coverage will be totally catered to Titans fans, and it will involve me talking the least, which I think is probably what everybody who doesn't like me wants anyway. So 3 o'clock, be listening for that. But there is a big Preds game tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes. A big one. And I don't feel like it's getting the buzz. It's not a sexy team. It's the Carolina Hurricanes, who, quite frankly, don't really mean much. And the large picture, they're not a longtime rival like the Chicago Blackhawks. They're not a team that's neck and neck all season long like the Winnipeg Jets a couple of years ago. They've never been in your division. In fact, they've never been in your conference. So here's Carolina tonight. They're not the defending Cup champions like Tampa Bay was on Tuesday night. So it's just kind of like, it is what it is. But then I started to look at the numbers. Weight loss. Everybody is always thinking about weight loss one way or another. And I think as somebody who has been really, really chubby, somebody who has lost a bunch of weight, somebody who's gained weight, lost weight, gained. Like, I know how to gain weight, I know how to lose weight, and I know what the traps that you could fall into were. I'm about 207 now. When I was a kid in high school, I was about 250, 260. Got down in college at one point to like 185. So I've kind of been through all of it. And let me say this. One thing that I always even have to argue with myself or hear myself saying, but one thing I always see is somebody who's done about 30 minutes of cardio and then says, you know what? I can have that donut tonight. I can have that piece of cake. I can have that cookie. I can do it. I worked out today. I worked out today. I'm good. I worked out. But then all you're really doing is you're canceling the progress you made in your workout. Tonight, the Predators aren't expected to win when they play the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina's in first place. Carolina was in the Eastern Conference Final a couple of years ago. They have really good players. They're well coached. They were expected to be here. Carolina is considered a contender for the Stanley Cup. According to MoneyPuck.com, the Predators have a 36.6% chance to win tonight. And yet I find tonight's game to be huge. They're riding the emotional high. The general manager showed his confidence in the team on Monday, and they rewarded that confidence by spanking the defending Cup champions on Tuesday. This is a team, after beating Dallas again in a shootout, that I think believes they belong in the playoffs. This is a team that I believe their fans believe they belong in the playoffs. But there's no guarantee you're going to make the playoffs. According to the same website, MoneyPuck.com, the Predators have a 62% chance of making the playoffs. That's pretty good. But their expected points are 63.2. So round down, that's 63. Dallas, meanwhile, is expected to finish with 60.8 points. Round up, that's 61. The difference between 63 and 61 is one game. So right now, I feel pretty good about the Predators making the playoffs. I think David Poile feels pretty good about the Predators making the playoffs. He just decided to keep the team together. But again, right now, by one game. That's what makes today so big. You made progress on Tuesday. Just like that person that got their exercise, their morning cardio, their 30 minutes on the elliptical. I worked out today. Don't ruin it by eating a donut. 2 games against Carolina. You're not supposed to win. You're not expected to win these 2 games. By the way, you know who Dallas is playing today? They're playing Columbus. You know who Chicago's playing today? They're playing Detroit. They are expected to win those games. I don't know how long this run, this hot streak the Predators are on, I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know if this it factor that we talk about, I don't know if this is something that is so big that will carry them all the way deep into the playoffs. They'll knock off Carolina or Tampa Bay in a series. They will believe in themselves past probably Colorado if they ended up in the, I guess they reseed now once everybody gets out of their divisions. They'll get past Colorado, and then they'll get a showdown with Peter Laviolette and Washington in the Cup final. And this it factor, whatever it is, whether it's the young players or the reinforcements or John Hines or the belief or whatever, will push them over the top. I have no idea. I have no idea how long it's going to last. But right now, we can't worry about that. Right now, we can't worry about whether or not they could compete with Tampa Bay in the first round of the playoffs. We can't worry whether or not they could compete with Carolina or with Florida in the second round of the playoffs. We can't worry about whether or not they can compete with Colorado or some of the top teams in the league, Washington, Toronto, the Islanders. We can't worry about any of that. What we have to worry about right now is making the playoffs. And again, you've got a 60% chance of making the playoffs. That's a whole heck of a lot better than 3 weeks ago when you had a 4% chance of making the playoffs. These things go up and they go down quickly. Dallas, I hate to break it to you, is very, very even as far as I'm concerned with the Predators. Every time you play them, they either beat you in regulation or you beat them in a shootout. That is the definition of being close. You're never going to blow them out. They blew you out early in the season when you weren't very good, but that's it. Everything else has been right down to the wire with the Dallas Stars. That's how close you are with them. That the prediction is 1 game. So tonight and Thursday night, when you play Carolina, you have an opportunity to steal. When they play Columbus tonight and Thursday night, they have the opportunity to mess up. Again, I'm not even talking about the mental aspect of what a win tonight over Carolina would do. I'm not even talking about, we looked at Tuesday night's game with, okay, they spanked Tampa. What does that mean if they play Tampa in a playoff series? I'm not looking to the fact that if the playoffs started today, they would be taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm not even getting into that, which I think is a very much a point worth discussing as far as this game's concerned tonight. I'm just looking at the ramifications of making the playoffs. Because right now, that's all that matters. That's what they've told us is what matters. By their actions, they got to make the playoffs now. The pressure is on to make the playoffs. You didn't get anything in return for Mikhail Granlund. You didn't get anything for Eric Halla or for Nick Cousins. So those guys better go out there. You better make the playoffs. But you're so close to not making it that it makes today's game. Don't look at today's game. Don't lose today's game and say, oh, it's okay. We beat Tampa on Tuesday. And we're not supposed to beat Carolina. They're the best team in the division. You cannot have that approach. The Predator, this is a big freaking game. It is big. And I hope that we go into it with that approach, with that feeling that these two games, but specifically this one tonight, is a big game. I'll compare it to the Titans. There are times where the Titans are a good team or a playoff caliber team, and they have a game against a good team at home or even on the road. In 2019, the Titans started off poorly. Marcus Mariota got benched. In came Ryan Tannehill. They won the games they were supposed to win. They beat the Raiders. They beat the Colts. They beat the Jags. They beat the Chargers. Then came a home game against the Houston Texans. The winner of that home game pretty much was guaranteed to make the playoffs and in the driver's seat for the division. That game went right down to the wire. Titans couldn't kick field goals. Titans couldn't cover DeAndre Hopkins. Anthony Ferguson drops the ball at the goal line that Houston returns all the way for their own touchdown, basically. You lose, they win the division. That's a big game. This game tonight is a big game. It is an opportunity to swing the pace of where you are in order to make the playoffs. Again, you've got a 62% chance of making the playoffs. That's not great. Dallas is right on your heels. The expectation is you'll finish one game ahead of them. Do you trust that you'll sweep 3 in a row from the Blackhawks? Do you trust that every game you play the rest of the way, you don't have any more against Detroit, that you can hold your own and you can get to that 63-point total? You're going to have to steal some games along the way. Tonight's a big one against Carolina. And I guess, Carolina, that thing I have a problem with is I'm not sure I feel the buzz. I'm not sure I feel the buzz about tonight's game with Carolina like I should. Now, I know there's a radio station in town that just completely ignores the Predators. Like, if I was a Preds fan, I would be embarrassed. If you're in a big city in Nashville, and some people just ignore the team, and I don't know why. Because, to me, I think it's the number one thing going right now. I think tonight's game is a big game, and I'm not sure I hear the buzz for it.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like, what was that, Tuesday night when we played Tampa Bay? I felt it. I felt it in the city. I really felt like this team, this city, we were ready for this game. And I don't know if it's maybe a little bit of a hangover from that huge win on Tuesday, or maybe people are saying, okay, or maybe people feel like they're in a comfortable spot to make the playoffs. But like you said, we're not. The Stars are right there. The Blackhawks are right there. We're playing an incredibly difficult series against Carolina, where those teams that are right behind us are not playing difficult series. I don't know what it is. I don't know if that's just my feeling. I don't know if I'm completely wrong, but I would agree with you that it doesn't feel like there's a big game tonight. Every game from now on is a big game.
Sure. And now look, if you go out there and you're the Predators and you reel off, like you just reel off this one, you reel off tomorrow, and you take 2 out of 3 from the Blackhawks, right? And now all of a sudden Dallas is looking at you and they're 15 points behind, or they're 8 points behind, or they're 10 points behind. And those games in hand that they have, that starts to close a little bit. Fine. Then maybe every game doesn't become as important. You know, if you clinch a playoff spot in the last week of the season, then those other 2 games aren't as important, for sure. But right now, I keep looking at that estimation that moneypuck.com has. That is, they expect you to finish with 63. They expect Dallas to finish with 61. That means you can't have any hiccups anywhere along the way. And every game you win against Carolina or against the Florida Panthers, every game you win against those teams is a game you stole off the ledger. And that's why tonight's a big one. That's how I feel about tonight's game. And again, I'm not sure if I hear the buzz around town for tonight's game that I'm used to. I mean, this is hey, 6:00 start tonight against Carolina. And I know it's not, the Carolina team is not like a rivalry team or anything like that, but there's something to this now. It is a big one tonight. So the Predators have decided this is what they think about their team. They wanted to go for it. So they are, in theory, going for it by standing pat. But they're going for it. They got their win Tuesday night. Dallas plays Columbus. They're going to win tonight. Chicago plays Detroit. They're going to win tonight. You play Carolina. Can you keep pace? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get your thoughts. And this is the question I have for the callers and the texters and everybody else. Do you look at tonight's game like it's that big? Do you look at it like it's a big game tonight? And what I really mean by that is, if they lose tonight, will you be disappointed? Or are you expecting, hey, Carolina's really good. The Preds aren't going to win every game. Let's keep it real. What are your expectations in that regard? Or are we off our rockers and thinking tonight's a big game for the Predators? 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Caroline Fenton is here. Ian is here. And a common thread or a trend that happens when you play teams ahead of you in the standings that I don't think tonight's game is. And I think the Predators better get it out of their heads if they think it about tonight's game. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company right here at ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Coach, this is a Carolina team certainly at the top of the division, but obviously we know what your team has been able to do lately as well. What is important tonight in this one, and how do you keep things going against this club here? Another test against one of the top teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great challenge for our group. I think that Carolina, top 5 team in the league, they're top of the Central Division right now. And, they're very competitive. I mean, they're a group that, they're competitive in their lineup. They play fast. You can tell they all play on the same page with how they want to play tactically. So for us, we know it's going to be a speed game. There has to be a lot of, competitiveness and work ethic for us. And, we think that this is a good test. We haven't beat them yet this year. I think we're 0-3 against Carolina. So, we need to make sure that we're continuing to build our game and continue to get wins, but, really have a strong focus level on this 2-game set of getting to our game to a higher level.
There you go. That was John Hines. By the way, Caroline, don't be fooled. John Hines, when he says, I think we haven't beaten them this year, John Hines doesn't think they haven't beaten them this year. John Hines knows they haven't.
I think he knows.
This he knows they haven't beaten them this year. Carolina, if the playoffs started today, that's who they'd be playing. The Carolina Hurricanes. And I think tonight is a big game. Hey, tune in later on in the show. We'll reveal a keyword for you to text into the game text line for your chance to win the T-Mobile Hockey Home Gate giveaway, a Dos Equis prize pack, including a case of beer, dessert from Nothing Bundt Cakes, a T-Mobile prize pack, and food provided by 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. I always love the term house money. Playing with house money. That's when you are so not expected to win a game or win a series or win whatever, that they say, you've got house money. You've got nothing to lose. Nobody will get fired. Nobody will get mad. Nobody will get upset. We've all seen it, right? Titans made it to the playoffs in 2019. They're going on the road to Foxborough to take on Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the New England Patriots. If they had lost that game, we would have said, you know what? It was tough, but they got to the first round of the playoffs this year. They didn't make it to the playoffs the year before. They went up against the greatest coach of all time, the greatest quarterback. That's what happens. You lose. You move on. They get to the AFC Championship game, and everybody is saying, oh, yeah, they absolutely had nothing to lose in that game. I mean, they were heroes for getting to the AFC title game. House money. It's legit. You play the Ravens this year in the playoffs. You win the division. You're hosting a home playoff game for the first time since 2008. And Lamar Jackson runs all over you. Ryan Tannehill throws an interception intended for Khalif Raymond. The defense doesn't get any meaningful stops. You punt on 4th and 2. There's pressure. There was pressure to win that game. There's people that were upset that they didn't win that game. That's not a house money game. You could look at tonight's game against Carolina, and you could say, it's house money. Again, Money Puck says they've only got a 35% chance of winning this game anyways. Carolina's in first place. Carolina's beaten them 3 in a row. Carolina was in the Eastern Conference Final a couple years ago. Carolina has really good players like Sebastian Aho. They're a good team. They're not going to win every game. The Preds have been red hot. They're bound to lose it at some point. And yet, I don't feel that way right now. I do not. Not with the Dallas Stars where they are. Not with where I believe the Dallas Stars roster is in terms of the Nashville Predators roster. Not where I see the Dallas Stars are playing the Columbus Blue Jackets and should win those games for a team that just traded their captain in Columbus, that knows they're going to fire their coach at the end of the year, that knows that they're kind of starting over again. I expect Dallas, a playoff team, I expect them to take those 2 games. I expect Chicago to take their games against Detroit. You don't have any more games this year against Detroit. I do not look at tonight as a house money game. I think tonight is a big game. Now, it's not the end of the world if you lose, but it's certainly not a freebie that, hey, if you lose this game, it's okay, regroup, get ready for Thursday. I mean, losing tonight does have some ramifications. And so I hope the Predators don't have it in their heads. And John Hines would never clue you in to what he's thinking or how he's thinking. But I hope they don't have it in their heads tonight that, hey, you lose tonight, we can still pat ourselves on the back after the game and say, hey, we've won a bunch of games. Don't be doing that now. Tonight, I think it's a big game. Tonight, I don't think it's one of those freebies. I don't think I certainly do not think it's there.
Yeah, I mean, you saw, and I don't think that would be the case if the Predators do lose tonight. I don't think that would be the case because you saw 3-0 loss to Tampa Bay. And yes, you could call it a moral victory because they played very well, but they came back on Dallas and won, albeit it was a shootout, but it was a win. They came back again, beat Tampa Bay 7-2. So I don't think the way that this team is currently playing, I don't think they have that attitude of, oh, well, we had a good run and it might end here. That's not what we've seen the past few weeks.
And I'm not saying tonight's a must-win either. It's like a weird spot, right? Like there's the games that you absolutely have to win. I mean, I don't want to say Dallas on Sunday night was a must-win.
It felt like it.
But it kind of felt like a playoff game. I'm not saying that this is that. It's not a must-win. I'm just saying, man, it's a big game. And I will say this for the belief factor, too. This is not a Carolina team that is missing a lot of its pieces. This is not a Carolina team that's going to run backup goalies out at you like the Predators knocked off on Tuesday night in Tampa Bay. Like this is a good team on the road. And I'm just saying that I feel like we talked about this yesterday a little bit. If they go out there and they smack Carolina, I mean, if they go out and just give the Hurricanes the business and win one of these games, I think it will be a real eye-opener and a message sender to Dallas and to Chicago that you better be perfect. You better be perfect down the stretch because if I'm beating Tampa Bay and Carolina and you're losing to Columbus and Detroit, you are not going to catch me. I said when they went into the season, it's funny. I didn't have big expectations this year. I think, they traded for PK Subban and everybody at that point thought, okay, big expectations. This was a team that went 7 games in the second round, right at the cusp of getting into the conference final. San Jose ends up going to the Cup final. You trade for PK Subban. Those are real expectations. I mean, that's a team that's expected to at least get to the second round far into the playoffs. You get to the Stanley Cup final, and then you win the President's Trophy. Losing in the second round is really disappointing. I mean, it wasn't like everybody wanted to throw everybody under the bus or anything like that, but it's just disappointing to lose that kind of game. Then you're not as competitive as you were before, but you win your division out in the first round. People are mad. Then you might not make the playoffs. Coach gets fired. So it kind of goes in trends. So then when this year started, I didn't really have expectations. I said, okay, if you're going to make the playoffs this year, you're going to lose to Tampa Bay and Carolina. You're going to have to knock off, we thought Chicago and Detroit were going to be the 2 bad teams in the division. You're going to have to win all your games against Chicago and Detroit, and you're going to have to split with Dallas, Florida, and Columbus. Well, now we know Columbus is a bad team, and we know Dallas isn't as good as we thought. They were in the Cup final a year ago. We know they're not that good. So now it changes a little bit. But because you lost some games to Detroit, because you lost some games earlier in the year to Dallas, lost one, I believe, at Columbus. Now you need to steal some games back here and there. You stole one against Tampa the other night. Got to steal one against Carolina. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I know you got a lot of thoughts on tonight's game. Caroline's told me that the text line is blowing up, so we will get to those. We've also got a giveaway later on coming up, so we got a ton of stuff to get to. TD Power Hour, big announcement at 3 o'clock as well. And a little lineup news that we'll get into coming up on the other side. There is one thing I am hoping and praying the Predators are getting ready to do, just for my own personal excitement. They're not going to do it tonight, but it may be close. We'll get to that next. Right here, Stillman and Company on ESPN 102.5 The Game. You know what season it is? It's moving season. If you're looking to move, you need to give my friends at TriStar Moving a call. At TriStar Moving, you'll get 5-star service throughout the entire process. Everything, and I mean everything, will be taken care of, from covering your floors and your banisters, railings, front door thresholds. They'll even wrap and protect all of your furniture and put all of your TVs into protective boxes. I know this because they took great care of my home, and they put all these TVs into protective boxes and did a fantastic job. They even have a brand new state-of-the-art storage facility located in Mount Juliet just for you. Their owners, Garrett and Robert, are true Nashvillians, and they care about helping this community any way they can, not just making a buck. So if you're looking to move, give my friends at TriStar Moving a call. 888-640-1219 or visit them online, nashvillemoving.org/radio. They'll give you 5% off your entire move. That's nashvillemoving.org/radio. TriStar Moving, my official movers.
I just wanted to ask John about the decision to recall Philip Tomasino to the taxi squad. Is it possible we could see him tonight or in the near future? And what are the immediate plans for him?
Well, we think Phillips played very well in Chicago. And, I think when you look at the track record of guys that are playing well in Chicago when they've come in here, I think he was the second leading scorer there besides Tanner Jeannot. But it's not just the scoring. I think that's a big part of his game, but the way that he's playing, we feel like he's got some good seasoning down there. There's no guarantee that he will not be in tonight. We're going to go with the same lineup that we had versus Tampa, but it is an opportunity where, there's a possibility he could get in. But as you said, there's still going to be decisions. Are they injuries? Is it the right fit? Does someone not play to the standard that we need them to play as you continue to get players back? So I think regarding Phillip, we recalled him based on his play, and yes, there's been some talk about possibility getting him in the lineup, but it's not guaranteed because we have all kinds of decisions to make if guys are coming back from injury, and we also like to base it on performance.
There you go, John Hines not going to play Philip Tomasino, number one prospect in the Predator system, not going to play him tonight, but not ruling out that they're going to play him. Remember, this is a kid who's got more hype right now than Eeli Tolvanen as far as the preseason prospect ranking. I mean, again, I have no idea. Is Tomasino a big boy forward? I don't know. As I've said, do Preds prospects on your own time. But when you are hyped up as the number one guy, I'd like to see you in the lineup. The more talent in the lineup, the better, and I'm here for it. By the way, 102.5 The Game is kicking off every weekend with free beer. Who doesn't love free beer? Tune in all day Friday for your chance to win a $25 gift card from Bavarian Beer House located at the Opry Mills Mall. Time now to take a look at our phone lines. Our text line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Caroline Fenton is on the text line. Caroline, what do we have?
Tyler from Berry Hill said something that I kind of agree with. He said, tonight is not the big game. It's the set that is big. You've got to win at least one of two to prove you can play with this Carolina team. And I kind of agree, which makes tonight's game big because it's one half of this set. But I think if you come away with 1 out of 2, I'd be happy.
Remember talking about house money? You win tonight, Thursday night, house money.
Right.
You know, I mean, that is, I try to be fair with all of this. Thursday night's game is total house money. I would say this, though. How much do we factor in the mental aspect that if the playoffs were to start today, Carolina would be the team that you're going to face in the first round? I think everybody would tell you Tampa Bay, and I read the numbers on The Athletic. Tampa Bay is still considered, analytically or whatever, to be the bigger contender, the more likely cup champion than Carolina is. And the thing that holds down, according to their models, both Tampa Bay and Carolina, is the fact that they would have to play each other in order to get out of the division. But as of right now, there's nothing set in stone that says the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to be the number 1 seed. So there's a possibility that the Predators are the 4, Carolina is the 1, and you would match up with them in the first round. So I ask, how much do we look at this and say, hey, if you can go in there and say you split the 2 games, but you just rough them up, they rough you up, 2 just down to the wire hockey games. How much does the mental aspect benefit the Predators that they would say, hey, we know we can play with them? Forget about the 3 games they've already played, because that was, I think one of them was very early in the season, like the 3rd game, and then Carolina had a little COVID issue after that. So they didn't play the 4th game. And then they played 2 that started off that road trip that began everything. And I think the first one was an overtime loss. So you've played them 3 times already when you weren't good. And 2 of those were right there at the end. How important is the mental aspect of what this team will think about themselves if they were to go into Carolina and have to win in a playoff series?
I think it's huge. And I think we go into this game and this series the same way that we went into Tampa Bay on Tuesday. We thought if they can beat Tampa Bay tonight, then we are going to feel so much better about them about facing the Predators, facing Tampa Bay in the playoffs. And I think that we apply that same logic here. If they can play well, win a game or 2, then I would feel so much better about the Predators playing in the playoffs, because that shows them, hey, we can do this. We may not get a win, but if we can stay neck and neck with them, the Predators can play against them in the playoffs.
Good catch.
And compete.
What else is in the text line?
Donovan said in the text line, this win is important, but what's even more important is that their style of play continues. They've just got to keep this grind going.
So the style of play is important. The fact that even when they didn't win Saturday night against Tampa Bay, you really felt like the effort was there. You felt like the compete level was there. You just thought, okay, Tampa Bay's a little bit better. I do think, though, that winning is really important right now. For 2 reasons. One, we just brought up the idea of playing Carolina in the playoffs. If you go in there and you beat them, especially if you sweep them, but if you go in there and you beat them, the mental aspect that it would give you of, okay, if you got to face this team in the playoffs, you can beat them, I think is important. The second thing is, I think you need to pick off one of these 2 games for the standings, where even if Dallas takes care of Columbus and they win both games. And again, I don't know if this is a 2-game series for Dallas. I don't know what's going on with these other teams because the schedule is so mashuggy anyways. I don't know what is what. But let's just say that they play 2 with Columbus. If Dallas takes 2, you got to at least take 1 from Carolina so that you maintain at least a little bit of pace. When I see the expected point total for you is 63, for Dallas is 61, that makes me nervous, because that means that you're one catastrophic injury or one screw up away from, now it's that one game to where it's evened out and now you're tied. Or there's that screw up and somebody gets hurt or maybe you cool off a little bit and you revert to the mean. And all of those things are in the back of my mind, and they all worry me about making the playoffs. So I do think that how they play is important in these games, but they do need to win one of these games.
That's important to note because we've talked a lot about this mental aspect. Can they keep this momentum going? Are they going to feel mentally ready going into a second game against Carolina, going into the playoffs? But you have to think about the actual points of it all. And I'm sure Dallas is sitting pretty thinking, hey, we've got a pretty easy series coming up, and they're going to be playing for that playoff spot.
Mm-hmm. So apparently, here's Dallas's schedule. 2 versus Columbus, and then 4 in a row against Detroit.
Ooh.
And meanwhile, you're playing the Chicago Blackhawks, you're playing the Carolina Panthers, or the Carolina Hurricanes, and then I think, Ian, I do believe you're playing the Florida Panthers at some point.
Yes.
So, buckle up, baby. Just keep the hot streak going. Just keep the hot streak going so that you don't run into that. What else is in the text line?
We've got one texter into the text line saying, okay, we lose both of these games. What next? What do you think happens next?
Boy, we have a rule on the show that you don't get in trouble for something you haven't done yet. But I do think if they lose both games and Dallas takes 2 against Columbus and then you're staring at 4 against Detroit with Dallas, that would bother me. Because, again, I don't think I can overemphasize how close to Dallas you are. I think we would all agree that Carolina is better than you. Everybody says talent-wise they're better than you, standings-wise they're better than you, and they're 3-0 against you so far this season. So even though you've improved, Carolina's still better than you. Okay? Then there's Tampa Bay. We would agree that they're better than you. Florida, and I think the Athletic said it was kind of like 50-50 if you were to play Florida. I need to see the new Predators, this group. I need to see them play the Florida Panthers before I decide, what the gap is between the Preds and the Florida Panthers. But there is no gap with Dallas. There is no gap. They have all these games in hand because of their COVID issues and their weather issue and everything else. So they can make up ground on you. And every time you play them, it goes literally right down to the wire. It is how many shootout wins do they have over Dallas? If this thing goes right neck and neck, one thing that we may look back on and regret about the season is that the Predators didn't win those Dallas games in regulation because Dallas has picked up so many points from the overtime and shootout losses. So you're right there with Dallas. You lose these 2 games to Carolina. Dallas gets 2 against Columbus and 4 against Detroit. They could catch up in a heartbeat. So that's why I look at tonight's game and I will feel so much better about everything if the Predators just win this first game. Because then the monkey is off their back about dealing with this Carolina series and looking at what Dallas could do. And yeah, guess what? It is scoreboard watching season. This idea that it's not, that we shouldn't be in scoreboard watching season or that, the Predators or you guys said they should sell or you don't believe in the team. Look, the team chose the path they're on. This is the path they're on. This is the path that you all cared about. Caroline, you talked about, in the text line on Monday, you felt like 60-40 people that were happy with the decision to stand pat, happy with the decision to try to make a run at it, and 40% that wanted to sell and were unhappy with what they did?
Right.
Okay, so this is the path they've chosen. So now we're following the path. And to me, not making the playoffs after what they did Monday would be a big disappointment. So now it's how do you get in? And this, again, Carolina, to the texter's point, hey, you lose both games. You're not out of it. You were expected to lose both games. It's not the end of the world, but it's not a good sign if you lose both games to Carolina. That's what makes today's game so big. You win today, you take the pressure off yourself. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get back into your texts and your calls, plus we'll hit the headlines. And I've got an NFL take that I want to get to. Because surprise, surprise, Caroline Fenton, there are a lot of people who apparently have a new team as far as competing for the Super Bowl. And you will never guess who that new team is, and you will never guess why.
I hope it's not who I think it is.
Eye roll. We'll get to that coming up next here on Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. Tune into Robbie and Rex Road every weekday morning at 8:45 when the Preds have a weekday game this season for your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click, and you can win a prize pack brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. Your next chance to participate is Monday morning. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Look, I would say that I don't necessarily believe that they are. I do believe that they are continuing to do a great job of building out this roster and kind of changing the expectations in Cleveland, one acquisition, one game, one win at a time. And that's exactly what, I think Kevin Stefanski had in mind when he was hired. And that's exactly the kind of culture that these guys in this locker room have ultimately put together.
There you go. One piece at a time. The Cleveland Browns. They got a piece yesterday, Jadeveon Clowney. And what did I say, Caroline Fenton, when I was talking about what ESPN was going to do today? Clowney, who I think is a replacement-level player, much closer to the practice squad than he is the Pro Bowl. Cleveland signs him yesterday. What did I tell you ESPN was going to do today?
Praise it.
Okay. Mike Greenberg asked the question to his panel about who was the second-best team in the AFC behind Kansas City. And Greenberg, when Booger McFarland said Buffalo and Louis Riddick said Indianapolis, Greeny Here's what he said.
But I will say this, the Browns were really good last year. The second season in this system, the quarterback should be better. And they're adding Jadeveon Clowney on one side of the ball and Odell Beckham Jr. on the other. He basically didn't play when they got
Those
good
are
last
names
year.
right now, Greeny.
Those are names.
Those are
names
names
we know. They're names that can play.
They're names that can play. Let's keep in mind, Odell's never been on a good team before, and you know my thoughts on Clowney. So I thought that was bad, right? That Greeny, and I like Greeny, but Greeny's kind of sucking into it right there. That belief that, hey, they got Clowney and Odell Beckham. One hallmark you're going to learn about sports talk radio is there's nothing like when the big name gets released or the big name wants a trade or the big name, and I'm sure this is every local market in America, but certainly here. Jared, what do you think? Should the Titans go after Antonio Brown? Jared, what do you think? Should they go after Le'Veon Bell? Jared, what do you think? Should they go after Odell Beckham? What do you think? What do you think? And 99% of the time, my answer is no. J.J. Watt, I said yes. But then when I saw how much money he got, no. But Greeny's buying into it. Max Kellerman on First Take today. Here's what he said about the addition of Jadeveon Clowney.
Jadeveon Clowney, sexy stats. The sacks is what we look for. It's easy to understand with defensive end or guys who play on the defensive line. And he can go get the quarterback. We've seen it when healthy. He can go get the quarterback. But he can also stop the run. You have him and Myles Garrett coming off either end with all the additions on defense. Yeah, not only will I say that the Browns should be favored in the AFC North right now, they're contenders to win the Super Bowl. They are Super Bowl contenders.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Super Bowl contenders now because they signed Clowney. And not only that, hey, we know he can get the quarterback. We know he has 3 sacks over the last 2 years. He's a great run stopper. At Minnesota, Dalvin Cook had 181 yards against the Titans. I can't believe that people can't quit the Clowney drug. Colin Cowherd opened his show today on Fox and said, it's all on Baker Mayfield now. Why? Because they added Clowney? Again, if there's a guy who leaves a team and every team that gets rid of him doesn't want him, it's probably you. I've never been married, so I've never been divorced. I plan on getting married one time, Caroline, and that's it. And then I don't plan on getting married ever again. And I don't plan on getting divorced either. But we all know those people that have been divorced like 3 or 4 times, right?
Which is okay.
But at what point, after your 4th divorce, don't you look in the mirror and say, yeah, maybe I'm the problem?
I've also never been married or divorced, so I can't speak to that topic, but I'm sure that is something that, hey, at one point you have to look in the mirror and say,
you're the problem.
I'm the problem.
And if you're Clowney and Houston doesn't want you and Seattle doesn't want you and Tennessee doesn't want you and now Cleveland wants you, ESPN can say whatever they want, which is not surprising. They love this Clowney signing. But I'm actually dropping the Browns in my head as to what I think they're capable of because I don't think Clowney's very good. Okay, it's time for Caroline's Headlines.
We're spanning the sports world. It's Headlines with Caroline on Stillman and Company, right here on Nashville's best sports talk,
ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
First and foremost, happy Jackie Robinson Day.
Yes.
One of my favorite traditions in professional sports. Also, Matthew McConaughey is now a part owner of Austin FC and the team's Minister of Culture. If Nashville's teams had a Minister of Culture, who would it be?
That's tough. I don't even know what that means. Like, what is that title? So does he preach to the team, or is he the guy that if you're upset with the coach, you go to Matthew McConaughey and you complain about it? Like, I don't.
I think it just means like he's the one who gets everyone rallied around the city.
Man, I think that's kind of dumb. But I have thought this for a long time. And I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do with this. If I feel like telling the Titans what to do, I wouldn't hide it. I have long thought that the Titans should hire Chris Sanders. And the reason I think they should hire Chris Sanders is not because Chris and I are friends, although we obviously are very, very close. I think the Titans should have hired Chris Sanders a while back because I think it's important to have a former player who is as positive as Chris is, that has the experience that Chris has. I think it's important to have that in your community. I think it's important for the young players to have a guy who is an employee of the team but is not on the coaching staff that they can go to. that can mentor them both on the field and off the field. Chris is a guidance counselor at MBA, and I guarantee you there are probably a lot of kids at MBA who have benefited from being able to go to Chris. And so I've always thought that's the kind of guy the Titans need. I also think Chris would be a great ambassador, not just coming on this show, but if I were the Titans, I'd want Chris to go on every show and talk about the Titans. He's a very positive person. He cares very much about the organization. He cares very much about the city. I think the players would find him as somebody that they could trust and believe in, who's not an authority figure, is not a coach, not a general manager, can't fire him, can't cut him, but can certainly help him. So while we joke about whatever that title you told me Matthew McConaughey has, I have long thought, and I don't think I've ever said this, because maybe something like this is not my place to tell the Titans what to do. It's not like a transaction, a football transaction, but I have long thought that Chris Sanders, or a guy like Chris Sanders, a former player, I know Marcus Robertson had a role like this for a while. I've always thought that a guy like that would have a good fit for the Titans in that kind of capacity.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's always important to have someone who's been there before, who, like you said, isn't necessarily in charge of you, but just kind of like a counselor in a way. Also, Trevor Lawrence said that he doesn't feel like he needs to prove anything. He feels like he doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. His dad said he's not I want to win a Super Bowl at all costs kind of guy, and his high school coach said that he could walk away from football any day and be totally fine. Is this the kind of quarterback that you want leading your team?
So, I don't really know Trevor Lawrence that well. I don't know the off the field, the on the field. I think I would be concerned. Nobody talks about this, but as bright as his star was after that freshman year in the national championship, he threw some interceptions in that second year. He wasn't great in that second year. And they got steamrolled last year by Ohio State in the playoff. I would want to investigate those things. The idea of the high school coach coming out and saying that he could walk away today and be fine, or the idea, I keep thinking this, do we know how much Ryan Tannehill loves football? Do we know what motivates Ryan Tannehill? Everybody knows what motivates Tom Brady because Tom Brady tells us what motivates him. But do we know that about Ryan Tannehill? Do we know that about Marcus Mariota? I think Marcus, everybody told me Marcus was first guy in, last guy out. That Marcus cared about everybody on that team. And he obviously didn't have it in order to be that kind of player. So I don't make too much of what the high school coach says. Although if we were in Jacksonville, we'd probably do 4 hours on it, and it would concern me a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And it also begs the question, are we maybe overvaluing these players who say that football is their life and they live and die by getting a Super Bowl?
Well, I do think that matters. That's why you draft a guy number 1 overall. You don't draft him as, we'd like to be kind of good. No, we'd like to win.
That's what they're saying about Trevor Lawrence.
We'd like to win the Super Bowl. I think that's how fans are going to feel. But I don't know. Right now, I don't make much of it, but it is something to keep in the back of your mind. And all of a sudden, you see it come up and, ooh, I don't know. What else?
It is interesting. Rick Barnes and the Vols landed a 4-star recruit, Jonas Adu, yesterday. Number 60 prospect on the 247 Sports rankings. The highest-rated post player to commit to UT under Rick Barnes. 6'11", 215 pounds. Is this going to make a difference for the Vols next year?
So I don't care about it. I think the transfer stuff matters more. Because, again, transfer players are ready to play today. But even Jerry Stackhouse and Vanderbilt, they're getting some recruits, and Rick Barnes getting recruits. And, Rick Barnes had Kevin Durant. He couldn't win with him. He had Keon Johnson. And Josiah Jordan James was a high recruit, and he hadn't won with him. I get it. Fans love to keep up with it on the day-to-day of, oh, look at our team. Look what we got. That's not going to change what Rick Barnes is. Right. That one recruit it's not going to. If Kevin Durant doesn't change what Rick Barnes is, this guy, and I don't know anything about him, he's not changing what Rick Barnes is.
Right, exactly. It's not about the recruit, but what you can do with them. Also, there are updated odds for the 49ers' 3rd overall pick. Only one player is favored, and who do you think that is?
Mac Jones.
Justin Fields.
Justin Fields is favored in Vegas to be the 3rd overall pick.
He is favored over Mac Jones, and Trey Lance pretty far below Mac Jones. But Justin Fields is the favored pick for 49ers now.
What's the difference between Fields and Jones?
Not big. Justin Fields minus 121, Mac Jones plus 100.
I think you should put some money on Mac Jones. Because I just don't think, I think they've made up their mind in San Francisco. And I read some stuff in The Athletic, an unnamed general manager. It sounds like, the experts are all saying, it's like everybody says, and I'm not an insider, I'm not a reporter, it's every time that a Schefter talks or a Rappaport talks or a McShay talks or something, it's like, well, we hear they're going to take Mac Jones, but it's like everybody wants to butt it with, I wouldn't take Mac Jones, but the general consensus is I think they're going to take Mac Jones. So I would put money on Mac Jones. Now, I think Fields is a better player than Jones, but I think they're going to take Mac Jones. Those are Caroline's headlines. Turron Davenport is here. He is stopping by with us. Coming up next, it's the TD Power Hour, and we've got a big announcement about the NFL Draft, and that's coming up next as well. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's 3 o'clock on a Thursday, which means it's the TD Power Hour. Turron Davenport, ESPN, is with us. TD, how are you?
I'm awesome, man. every day is a good day. You already know how I approach it. So I woke up, I won, and let's go, man.
There you go. Speaking of winning and speaking of going, it is time now to make our official announcement for the NFL draft. So everybody, there's going to be all kinds of draft shows, the ESPN, NFL Network, ABC, they'll all have the draft. ESPN Radio will have the draft, but we will have our own draft coverage right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. And I think I've been hinting at it, Turron, for a little bit. But I told the people, I go, if you are a fan, of one of the people, fan of this show, if you're a fan of the Titans, an old school fan, you're going to want to watch this show. If you're a new school fan, you're going to want to listen to this show. If you're a fan who doesn't like me, you're going to want to listen to our draft coverage on Thursday and Friday night. So I'm just going to lay it all out. Next Thursday, 1 week from today, we will have the draft preview show. TD will be a part of that. Chris Sanders, former Titans receiver, next Thursday from 5 to 7. But then round 1 draft night in Nashville will be live. We'll have the whole first round covered from Third and Home in Germantown. It'll be me. It'll be TD. It'll be Chris Sanders. And it'll be Mark Howard will be joining us. So we will have the full crew. And I'm talking about Titans experts on draft night. TD, who nobody knows the Titans and watches as much draft film as TD. Chris Sanders. And then, of course, bringing in the legend, Mark Howard. I think, TD, it's going to be one of those nights on draft night, which we'll have streaming live on Periscope and Twitter and Twitch and YouTube, so you can watch it, or you can just listen on your app and mute the sound on the TV and listen as we're breaking down the whole draft, but really focused on the Titans 2 weeks from today. TD, I don't think I'm going to even have to do any work. I think I'm just going to sit there and say, all right, we're going to let the 3 Titans experts talk, and I'm going to sit over here in the corner as we wait for the next pick. I think I'm Trey Wingoing it this year, and I'm just staying out of the way, but really excited. And then we'll have Friday night covered as well. TD, Chris, yours truly, and we'll be live from Boombas and East Nashville. So loaded draft coverage, Turron.
That's what it's all about, man, and this is what we're here to do, give the listeners what they want, and I look forward to it, man. I'm excited about it. You already know this draft time. This is one of my favorite times. And I just love the way the league has made it so year-round you always have something to do and always have something to be of interest. I mean, after the draft, they're going to be releasing the schedule. You know what I mean? So it's just a bunch of stuff. So let's go, man.
And one final honor, or one final thing about our draft coverage. I gave a lot of thought about this. And there was always kind of a big part of our show was on the Thursday of draft day. So 2 weeks from today, we started off every show with Floyd's 5 Titans targets for draft night, where he laid out the 5 guys he would be there with that pick, then how likely are those guys to be there, why each guy, where they fit, and then the backup guys and things like that. And it was always one of my favorite things to do was to open up the Thursday of draft night with Floyd's 5 Titans targets. And I reached out to TD a couple weeks ago and I said, this is not something that I take lightly, because the knowledge that you have to have of these draft prospects to be able to say who's really a fit and what position and who could be there and who's already going to be gone, the basis of knowledge that I want for that and that I think that you guys, the listeners, deserve is very, very high. And I couldn't think of anybody else than TD to hand that responsibility to. So TD, 2 weeks from today, we're going to need to hear your 5 Titans targets. We're going to keep, all throughout the night as guys fall off the board. TD's going to be saying, hey, what the Titans should be thinking, who moves up into that, who moves out of that, who would you take over that guy? And maybe it's not a big deal to the listeners, TD, but it's a big deal to me, that kind of position. And I'm glad that you're going to be doing that for us this year.
Yeah, man, that's a lot of pressure you put on me, man. You got me feeling like the car that somebody that had a Bentley, it doesn't work anymore. So, well, I'm not saying Coach Floyd doesn't work, but they had to trade the Bentley in, and you got me feeling like that second car, man. It's a lot, but we'll make it happen.
Well, I just say, you're the other Bentley. So we're getting a new Bentley, I guess, in that case. TD, I want to start with this. Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft came out. Elijah Moore, wide receiver, Ole Miss with pick 22. And guess who I thought about as soon as I opened up Mel's mock draft and I saw Elijah Moore with that pick? I thought of you. Yeah. Because I'm not going to say that Elijah Moore is TD's son, but if I found out that Elijah Moore was your son, I wouldn't be surprised with how much and how long you've been talking about him. But then Mel's got Gregory Newsome right after it, 1 pick later. And I'm like, I know TD loves Greg Newsome too. And then he's got Azeez Ojulari at pick 30, and I know how much you love him. So what did you make of Mel's mock draft? You love Elijah Moore. You love Greg Newsome. You love Azeez Ojulari. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent pick. And for me, that is actually the direction I would go. Point blank. That's the direction I would go, Elijah Moore. And here's why. That guy satisfies 3 needs for your team. What do you need? You need a dynamic playmaker that can make plays down the field. Elijah Moore checks that box. You need a guy that could just be in that slot and run those jerk routes and make the chains move and do those things. Elijah Moore checks that box. And by the way, he's very tough across the middle, but he also gives you the vertical. But it's been a while. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. The last punt return for a touchdown was called back, and that was by Adoree Jackson in, 2017. So it's been a while since this team has gotten any type of production out of the punt return game. He checks that too. Give me Elijah Moore. You already know that he and A.J. Brown could coexist. They did it, at Ole Miss. Ryan Tannehill will love a player like that because, remember, he loves being able to throw the ball up there and trust his guy to get it. Elijah Moore's only 5'9", but rest assured, he plays bigger than that.
What do you make of the fact, though, that a guy like Greg Newsome, if he comes in, is going to be on the field every snap? Every defensive snap you have, Greg Newsome's going to be out there on the outside at a premium corner position, whereas Elijah Moore's going to play a lot, but the slot, on a running team where you've got A.J. Brown, it's not, the impact is probably not as much as a starting corner. How do you compare those two?
Well, here's the thing with Elijah Moore. He doesn't have to touch the ball a whole lot to make things happen. And that's what stands out to me. And I get what you're saying about Greg Newsome, and he's obviously, he's a player that I'm very fond of. But I think the impact that Elijah Moore would have, I think, would be greater than the impact of a Greg Newsome.
What did you think of Mel switching out Kadarius Toney and putting in Elijah Moore?
I'm all for it. I've always felt that listen, man, Elijah Moore, I've been talking about him since 2019, right? And the last, well, I don't know if there's a receiver that over the last 5 years that I've liked as much coming into the league as A.J. Brown. But, in watching all of the Ole Miss games, and just enjoying watching A.J. Brown, I kept saying to myself, this little number 8, this guy's a dog. He's ridiculous, and here he is now, a guy that the Titans may be able to add. So for me, Elijah Moore over Toney, that's all day. That's not something that surprises me. It's something that I agree with 100%.
One thing I think about with adding a guy like Elijah Moore in the slot is you can always find a slot receiver, like just a guy that can be a slot guy. But to find a dynamic slot guy that can just totally change a game, that's not easy to do.
Exactly.
And I think about how much Ryan Tannehill threw the ball to Adam Humphries when Adam Humphries was healthy. Like, Humphries was hurt for so much of Tannehill's tenure as the quarterback of the Titans. We forget that, he definitely, you could see the drop-off when Humphries would be hurt and Ferkser would kind of play that role. Well, Ferkser's an undrafted free agent guy. I like Ferkser, but he's a $1 million a year undrafted free agent kind of guy. We're talking about the 22nd pick, the dynamic kind of playmaker. I think of this as kind of like an Alvin Kamara at wide receiver when I think of the Titans drafting Elijah Moore in the first round. And so the thought of that gets me excited that you may have one of the most talented slots in the league for a quarterback who loves to get the ball out quickly and who loves to get the ball to the slot.
Yeah, and you mentioned the dynamic part, and here's the thing. That's what I opened up with. I envision this Titans offense with A.J. Brown and Josh Reynolds with Elijah Moore on the slot, and I envision him running those deep over routes, running those dagger routes and those type of things, running a skinny post, those bang eights off of play action. I could just envision that and say, that dude will stretch the field for them out of the slot. And I saw firsthand what having a guy like that can do for an offense when I covered the Eagles in 2017. And the guy who they actually did call him my son, Nelson Aguilar. But they literally called, even in the locker room, they called him my son. But, he stretched the field. And it just opened so much stuff up for Alshon Jeffrey running, slants and digs and those type of things. And Torrey Smith doing what he does. So that will really open the defense up, and it makes the offense rather, and it makes the defense have to defend each layer of the field, and that's an advantage.
And one other thing I just thought about that popped into my head, TD, is don't we kind of feel like bringing in a slot receiver and bringing in a dynamic slot kind of kills two birds with one stone because it fills the slot position, but they probably would look to recoup Jonnu Smith's pass-catching production from that spot if they use such a premium pick on it.
Yeah, from that spot, and also an increased opportunities for Anthony Ferguson, a.k.a. Sticky Fingers. You know what I mean? So that's something that I definitely look at. But I also look at this. Josh Reynolds has played the slot. A.J. Brown, you go back to the Ravens game, you saw him in the slot, and dadgummit, Marlon Humphrey got everything that he could have wanted from A.J. Brown in the slot. I don't know why they got away from it, but, I know Jimmy Smith started to cover him too, but, yeah, that was an advantage. So now if you want to put A.J. Brown in the slot, if you want to put Josh Reynolds in the slot, guess what? Elijah Moore is good enough to play on the outside. As I said, he plays beyond his size. So that's something else that really is good about him. Even though he's not the biggest player, you could put him on the outside, and he'll do fine for you. I wouldn't do it consistently, but there are times. So that gives you more versatility. So that way, when you have a team that goes cat coverage against A.J. Brown and you want to move him across the formation, you could do that and not have to take one of your other playmakers out.
So, again, TD's going to have the list of the Titans targets, the 5 Titans targets. Why do I feel like I already know who number 1 is? Why do I already feel like I feel like I got a feeling on that one? So you must have, when you clicked Mel Kiper Jr.'s mock draft and you saw Elijah Moore at 22, did you call Mel and say, hey, Mel, I told you about this guy?
I shot him a text, and just said good stuff. We're sharing a brain.
There you go. TD's with us, 615-737-1025. We'll have our questions for TD, so go ahead and text those in right now on the draft, 615-737-1025. Positions of need. I hate drafting for need, but you got to fill it somehow. How does TD view in this draft how these needs will all fit in and figure in? We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. TD is with us. We're live from the Wholesale Inc. studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. And I told you all about our draft coverage, which I'm very excited about. Mark Howard, Chris Sanders, TD. Again, I hope everybody knows this. I'm going into those draft shows thinking it's going to be my job to just facilitate and stay out of the way with those 3 Titans experts. Do not miss our best draft coverage on Thursday, April 29th and Friday, April 30th on ESPN 1025 The Game, presented by Founders Brewery, Apple Collision Centers, and MTGRT.com, your live and local mortgage expert. More with TD Power Hour coming up next. Stillman and Company were delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. the company. By the way, I should mention, starting Monday, listen to the game every weekday for your chance to win $1,000. It's the game's 1K payday. Listen for keywords at 9, noon, and 3. When you hear it, go to thegamenashville.com and enter the keyword for a shot at $1,000. TD's here on the TD Power Hour. TD, we kicked it around last week of positions of need. If you were to put an equal player on the board, so equal caliber, equal quality player on the board at all of the positions of need for the Titans. So it's wide receiver, it's tight end, it's tackle, corner, and edge. How kind of would you structure it, and how does it play out knowing the depth of the draft, in your opinion? Ian and Caroline went corner before edge rusher. I went with edge rusher before corner. How do you see it, knowing what positions the Titans can get later in the draft?
First of all, shout out to Ian, man. Got me feeling like I was, at Bridgestone Arena, and it was a power play. You know what I'm saying? That Party Up by DMX. Thanks for playing that.
R.I.P., by the way.
Yeah, for sure, man. Got me hyped, man. For me, I would have to go, and it's a tough call, but I would probably say wide receiver because you lost one of your best wide receivers in Corey Davis. And mind you, Jonathan Smith is gone too, so you need someone that could give you that immediate impact as a pass catcher, and that's why I think receiver is the most important one. I feel like right tackle is a position that, there are some good prospects, but I think this team is solid at right tackle. I think you have two decent options. They're not the best options, but they're two decent ones. Outside linebacker, DN, edge concept. I think a guy like a Patrick Jones, who I've been talking about him for a while. He is on top.
He's Houston?
No, actually from Pittsburgh. Patrick Jones is second. And, he's on talking with TD this week. But I think he's a guy. You look at other options. Patrick Johnson, is another guy. There are options that you could get. But they've already signed. You got Bud Dupree. You got Danico Autry. I think that's going to help the pass rush there. So I don't think that's a position of need as much. And corner, no one's talking about him, but DJ Daniels is such a solid man corner. Anybody that was at the Senior Bowl or anybody that you talked to that played in the Senior Bowl and participated in that week, they'll tell you DJ Daniels was the toughest corner that they went against.
And where's he out of?
He's from Georgia. And listen, I like Tyson Campbell a lot. Now, I think he's the best of those three, but DJ Daniels may be the best man corner of those three. And he gets that TD stamp by saying that he's a corner that we will fight in practice. If he was on my team, I had to go against him. He's feisty like that, and I think he would be solid.
Especially replacing what you lost with that in Malcolm Butler.
Right.
And knowing that if there's anybody that's going to probably be a good influence on that, it's Janoris Jenkins.
Yeah, Jack Rabbit, he's a feisty one too. He'll get up in your chops and press you and run with you down the field. So he would be actually really good. And a lot of people, they look at, how he looks, and they say, oh, well, he can't be a good mentor. Rest assured, he could be a very good mentor, and he would be a very good mentor for Christian Fulton as well as any other young corner they bring in.
I guess my biggest question surrounding the receivers is what do you think will be there in the second round? And I can say the same things about the corner because I think Mel Kiper Jr. had Asante Samuel Jr. As his second-round pick to the Titans, and that's certainly a name that would get me excited. I mean, I remember how good Asante Samuel Sr. was, and so I think to myself, okay, when I look at the wide receivers in this class, I know that Chase, Waddle, and Smith are all gone, before we can even sniff the idea of the Titans. The Titans may get their pick of the first guy that's not in that grouping, whether it is Elijah Moore, whether it is Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney, all of those guys are there.
Yeah.
But then who's going to be there in the second round? Because when I look at the mock drafts, and I know the mock drafts aren't everything, but when I look at them, Turron, I see a lot of guys I'd love on the Titans just going right before the Titans pick in the second round. If you could tell me that Rondale Moore is sitting there in the second round, then I would feel comfortable going with Greg Newsome over Elijah Moore in the first round, because then I can get Rondale Moore later. But I don't think Rondale Moore will be there that late into the second round when the Titans are picking. So it's hard for me to kind of judge what, do I go here first round, there in the second round to know what would be there in the second.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Rondale Moore in the second round would be ideal. But here's the difference between the Moores. Elijah is one that you could confidently put on that outside and know that he's going to do what he needs to do. Watch the Vandy game. Watch that game. He hit that corner, number 4, with a whoop-whoop, double move, long touchdown, man. So I think there's a difference there. And when you're going first round to second round, you want, the guy that you take in the second round the first round to be better than the second round. And I think Elijah Moore in that case is. Now, as far as guys available in the second round, Nico Collins, no one is talking about him. Mm-hmm. He was also on talking with TD this week. No one's talking, but he's a prototypical X receiver. In fact, he's my number 1 rated X receiver, right? So he's somebody in the second round that will be there. 6'4", 215, could run like a deer, could go up and get the ball. Very, very good prospect. He did an excellent job at the Senior Bowl. That's someone. Cornell Powell, one of my other top-rated X receivers. Another guest on Talking with TD. Very, very good receiver. In fact, Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, said he reminds him of Sterling Sharp. That's saying a lot because of the power that he plays with. If you want slots, well, Amari Rodgers will probably be there. So there are options. I just think what the Titans need, Elijah Moore is the best mix of that. And then after that, I go Rashad Bateman, who could play the slot as well. His tape from 2020, he did that. He could also play on the outside. You look at his 2019 tape. So for me, those would be the top guys. Second rounder, though, I mean, there's an abundance of options that you could go to.
So I would totally agree. I mean, I love Bateman. I've loved Bateman and Rondale Moore for a while. I just wonder, I thought going into this, okay, you signed Bud Dupree. What if you went edge rusher in the first round and then edge rusher with one of your third-round picks? Would that be crazy? Because, I mean, I just feel like for years the Titans have been paper clipping and gumming together their pass rush, whether it was out of position play. Like Derek Morgan was a 4-3 defensive end who, when Ray Horton, Dick LeBeau showed up, now becomes a 3-4 outside linebacker. He was totally out of position. And they've tried it with Morgan and Arakpo and Rapati Patoa, and then they've tried, Harold Landry and getting him a little help in Clowney and Beasley. And I feel like if you sign Dupree and you draft Ojulari and you draft a guy in the third round, Joseph Asai out of Texas, this is a name throw out there.
No.
Then I would feel in my heart like, okay, they've got the resources at Sacker. They will get after the quarterback this year. Am I crazy for thinking that kind of investment at that position?
If you take Joseph Asai over Elijah Moore, you need to be slapped. That's first and foremost. But I could get down with the Azeez Ojulari selection. That is something that would definitely help. I think really
I was talking about Asai in the third round.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes it a lot more palatable. Here's the thing. Just like when we talked about corner, right? What they do in the first round at corner is going to tell us a lot what they feel about Christian Fulton. What they do in the first round at edge is going to tell us a lot of what they think about Harold Landry as far as next year, right? Mm-hmm. Because his deal, like he's going to be up for a deal. Let's say he has double-digit sacks. Guess what? It's going to be a bunch of teams wanting to sign him. Yep. You know what I mean? So are you going to get in a situation where you have to address pass rush next year? I think they should sign Landry, you know what I mean, and bring him back. But that being said, if they don't feel like they want to pony up, then they could get a guy like Ojulari. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's the way I would go.
I think there are some tells there, to your point about Fulton, but more importantly about Landry. And I am pretty sure that if the Titans approach Landry right now, he wouldn't be interested in talking. I think he's focused on having a big season and then hitting the market because I think he sees what everybody else is making on the open market.
Oh, yeah. And you can't do that right now anyway. You know, that's not something that they could do.
TD's with us, 615-737-1025. Caroline and I are going to try to pin down TD on his reporting because I will say this. I got to assume it's got to be really hard this year and last year trying to report on what teams are doing in the draft. But TD gets to all the Titan targets. I don't know if you've subscribed to Talking with TD. He gets there some way, somehow. So what has he picked up on as far as what the Titans have been doing behind the scenes? We'll get to that with TD coming up next. Plus, a Vanderbilt prospect nobody's talking about that maybe fits something that John Robinson has proved to us in the past he's willing to do. We'll touch on all that. And, of course, your questions for TD. It's the TD Power Hour on Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Something new. Stop.
Stillman and Company. Hey, join ESPN 102.5 The Game tomorrow from 11 to noon at the T-Mobile in Brentwood at 1701 Mallory Lane as we celebrate the kickoff of Nashville SC season. There will be free lunch from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and you can register to win tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Also, the Nashville SC and T-Mobile merch trucks will be on site, brought to you by T-Mobile, the official wireless partner of Nashville SC. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour. Caroline, all these draft gurus, and I consider TD like a hybrid draft guru. He covers the Titans.
He's a specialized draft guru.
He is definitely a specialized draft guru, but he's a draft. To me, he's a guru because he talks to agents. He talks to teams and organizations. He talks to prospects themselves. I mean, all these star players that come on Talking with TD, they don't just show up on Talking with TD. So TD looks good in the bow tie on TV, but he is always hustling. And here's my question, TD. What do we know? What do we know right now? Who are the Titans zooming with? Who's talked to the Titans? Who feels like they've had good interactions from the Titans? What are the nuggets on what the Titans might be thinking so far in the draft? Because I know if anybody knows, it's you.
Yeah, a lot of interest in wide receivers. And Rob Moore, the receiver coach, that is one busy guy. He's getting all of the Zoom time in that he could ask for. There's a lot of receivers talking to him. What they're doing very, very frequently with the guys that I've spoken to is they put them on the whiteboard, and they'll have them, go over route combos and those type of things, and then they'll have a conversation, and then they'll ask them to regurgitate the information, and that's kind of like their test, right? So that's definitely something that's happening a lot. Edge guys, Azeez Ojulari, I know there's an awful lot of interest in him. You saw them at Zaven Collins, his pro day. But Patrick Jones, who I just spoke to today, he spoke to Mike Vrabel, and Coach Vrabel is talking to a lot of those guys as well. So one thing I will say is there's a common thread in at least 15 guys that I've talked to. All of those guys that I've talked to that have talked to the Titans were the ones that I really feel the best about interviewing. The ones who I felt the most energy from, the ones who, I really gathered that they – to use the Titans brass, to use their term, they love ball. To use my term, they're that dog. So that's something that I'm seeing.
One thing I wonder is, does it matter who talks to Vrabel, who talks to Rob Moore, who talks to Keith Carter, who talks to John Robinson? Like, you would assume that if they're going to take a guy in the first round, Robinson is going to want to speak to him. Vrabel is going to want to speak to him. And probably the position coaches are going to want to speak to him. Floyd used to always tell me with offensive linemen, he wanted Mike Munchak around him. Mm-hmm. That was, he didn't need Jeff Fisher around him. He wanted Mike Munchak around him. But then I think back to Chris Sanders, who thought he was going to Washington or he thought he was going to some other teams. The Titans had never even talked to him, never even shook his hand, never even winked in his direction. And all of a sudden, on draft day, he gets a call, hey, Floyd Reese, Houston Oilers, we've just selected you in the 3rd round. So every time I think about who they're talking to, I think of that Chris Sanders story, and I'm like, could they be hiding in the weeds on some guys too? And how do you filter that in when trying to figure out what they may do?
Yeah, I think you can filter that in, but look, man, and not just because it's my homie, you know what I mean, but Chris Sanders was different, right? I mean, I don't know if you realize how good he was at track and field. And he was that rare guy that track speed transferred to the football field. So, I mean, he's someone that you could look at and be like, yeah, you know what? Worst case scenario, we could work with that speed. You know what I'm saying? So I could see that. There's always, you got guys who never are in contact with a team and they end up being a high draft pick. It's just the way it goes. And those are teams that they trust the tape. And at the end of the day, that's really the most important part of it. It's different, now because you have so many personalities and so many ways for guys to get entrapped into the wrong things. But I still feel when you're sorting through this whole thing, the best thing you have to do is marry a player to the team's traits, right? So, you use the Titans, for example. They want guys who love football. They want guys who are gritty. They want guys who are alphas. They want guys who have no problem putting in extra work. And John Robinson, he likes guys that had a lot of production. So you look at that, and that's where Elijah Moore comes into play. That's where, Azeez Ojulari comes into play. That's where a lot of these guys that they're talking to, that's where they come into play. Patrick Jones, that's where there's a lot. Dwayne Eskridge, I know there's interest in him. He met with Rob Moore. Amari Rogers met with Rob Moore. There are plenty of guys, and if you look at each of the ones that they're meeting with, they all have that common trait. So for me, the most important thing after what they do on the field is marrying their personality to how the locker room is.
TD is with us on the TD Power Hour, talking with TD. So I hinted at this. There is an injured player. His name is Diane Odengbo. I think I got that right.
Deo
Odengbo from Vanderbilt.
Yep.
Who, if Derek Mason was still the coach at Vanderbilt right now, he'd be going on all the shows trying to pump up Odengbo. And I wouldn't shock me just knowing the guy that Derek Mason is. It wouldn't surprise me if he was talking to every team in the league about the kind of guy Odengbo is. Suffered an Achilles injury. I think was a late first to mid-second round pick with the way he played at Vanderbilt. Tears his Achilles. We know Robinson loves to buy low on injured players. He did it with Landry. He did it with Davis. He did it with Simmons. Do you think there's a chance that this could be a fit for the Titans? I saw Christian Barmore, Dane Brugler picked in the first round at The Athletic, and I'm thinking, I like Autry and I love Simmons, but if they could add another dog in there to rotate in that could be multiple, that they could put all three on the field at one time, they could play with one guy at one time, they could play with two guys, they could, rest guys. I think it'd be a great fit for the Titans on defensive line.
Yeah, it's always good to have someone that you could rotate for sure. I absolutely think there's a chance, that the Titans select Dale Odengbo. And look, man, like that guy, he's a moose, man. The way he rushes the pass, and he's relentless. That's the thing I love about him. And there's a clip, actually, Jim Nagy, he posted it, man. The dude he took on a block. He got cut. He went down on the ground. He got up and still had the audacity to tackle the ball carrier. Like, that's what I'm talking. That's relentless. He took on 3 blocks. He got through 3 blocks and contact with the ground and still made the play. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when I mentioned, guys who fit what the Titans want. That's it right there. So, yeah, absolutely he would be one. And I know Coach Mason would be on the radio pumping him up, but, Coach Mason, we got you. He's booked for talking with TD next week, so we'll definitely talk to Deo Odengbo.
I mean, I don't know who's not booked for talking with TD. I mean, at this point, it's like, yeah, we got Trevor Lawrence coming on. We got Trevor Lawrence coming on. Then we got Kyle Pitts coming on. Then we got Jamar Chase coming on. And then we got this 4th-round projected linebacker that I like out of TCU. He's going to be on talking with TD too, and then he's going to make the Pro Bowl next year. I'm just – I don't know who's not on talking with TD.
Actually, there is a linebacker that the Titans have shown interest in that was on there. He'll probably be a 6th or 7th round pick, but he will be, or maybe a high priority undrafted free agent, but he will be on a team for 10 years. His name is Grant Stewart out of Houston. He's out there on the field. When he plays, he looks like Captain Caveman. You know what I mean? But he's all over the place. He makes all of the tackles. He reminds me of Chris Borland, if you remember him from Ohio State that went to the 49ers.
Mm-hmm. Talking with TD, no stone left unturned at all. Speaking of talking with TD, that's what we're doing on the TD Power Hour. Caroline, we're going to unleash the text line on TD.
I'm ready.
All your questions for TD, get them in. I already see we got a lot of them. So we will go right to them next. 615-737-1025. Your questions for the guru, Turron Davenport. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They're giving away a free vacation for you and your family this month with every purchase of a new whole home generator or select new HVAC systems. Hiller is giving you a free week-long vacation. With every purchase of a new tankless water heater, Hiller is giving you a free weekend-long vacation, and they'll pay for your gas with a $100 gas card. Choose from over 400 Marriott, Wyndham, Hilton, or Hyatt hotel properties. Take advantage of this unbelievable deal while you can. These deals are only available for a limited time, so make sure you schedule today. Visit happyhiller.com for all of the details. As always, Happy You Will Be or the service is free, and I can promise you that because, well, they take great care of my home. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporter of the Vols and the Preds. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. is with us. It's the TD Power Hour here on Stillman and Company. By the way, Caroline, we're giving something away at the end of the Power Hour, so be listening for your opportunity to win.
Intriguing.
Something. We got a bunch of texts to get to. We will do that, but sometimes I got to skip people to the front of the line, Caroline. The VIPs, sometimes they... Chris is up next. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Titans and Truth, who finally had me on his Titans and Truth podcast after I got mad that he had TD on before he had me on, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time. Chris, go ahead.
Yes, indeed. And first of all, I definitely thank you for coming on. That was a very fun show, indeed. And hopefully there'll be a time I can get both you and TD on at the same time.
Hey,
that
Chris.
would be probably incredible, epic.
Chris, did you notice that when I was on your podcast, I was hinting about adding Caroline to the show?
I think you did mention some stuff about that. And actually, I forgot to actually say, Caroline, wherever she may be, welcome in. And I look forward to hearing her thoughts as well. So, I know you were hinting at some big things coming, and that is a big thing right there.
Well, thank you, Chris. I look forward to meeting you.
All right, what's your take, Chris?
Yeah, my take is, I know you were talking about a lot of guys that they could be looking at. Another guy that, some guys that I had in my mind, well, one, as much as I would hate them taking an offensive lineman in round one, which I pray to God they don't, but if they did, I'm starting to fall in love with Tevin Jenkins.
Why?
The guy is nasty. And as much as I know TD does not, me and TD disagree on Joseph Osai. There was a particular rep I looked at. He embarrassed Osai in the worst way possible. I mean, I almost wanted to cry for Osai what he did to him. It was criminal. But I like that. Elijah Moore is really starting to grow on me along with Terrace Marshall Jr. A guy late that I was looking at, I know we're looking at tight end, is Trey McKinney out of Georgia. Is a guy late that I could see. And, of course, my love for Tylen Wallace. But I just had to call in a little bit. Thank y'all both for everything that y'all have done for me and everything else. But I just had to call in and mess with you a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for your call, Chris. TD, you didn't seem very excited about Tevin Jenkins.
Why do you want to use a first-round pick on a player that he may be a guard, he may be a tackle? Guess what? They don't need guards. You see what I'm saying? No. And I think we have to be careful not to get caught up in these things that get released, right? And obviously the news that Charlie Casserly spoke to someone and they said that Tevin Jenkins is one of the Titans' favorite prospects. Yeah, whoop-de-dang-gone do. I don't think that's a selection that should be made.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I was talking to Trey Wingo this week on the show, and I asked Trey, I go, how much of what – I mean, you've been up there on the stage with Mel and Shefty, and I go, how much of what they're getting is the truth? And he, about 10%. He said Mel is convinced everybody is lying to him at this point in the year. I'm sure Casserly knows the game too. Caroline, what do we have on our text line?
Dylan asked TD, what do you think about going for a right tackle in the second or third round?
Third round, I think, it would be perfect. There's a guy, and I talk about him a lot, Dante Smith out of East Carolina. That would be a perfect selection with one of the third-round picks. That's the direction that I would go if you're going to go right tackle.
Clearly, I would say about right tackle, they clearly think that it's a long-term issue to fix. I mean, I know that they, I think, feel comfortable now with Lamb and Sambrilo, but it's obviously if they were going to use a first-round pick on it last year, that long-term they want to have that kind of player in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is something that they want to fix long-term, and they're going to have to do that eventually. And anyway, you have to continue to get guys that are premier spots, right? And the way that this league is going with teams having guys that can rush the passer from both sides and also teams just having bookend really good pass rushers, you need to have bookend tackles. And I think that's something that, will really have to be an issue that they address down the line, now for down the line. And that's why I think Smith is a perfect option.
Caroline?
Kenston asked, I know the team is really high on Kevin Johnson on the corner, so is corner really a top 3-round choice?
Absolutely. Why would it not be? Absolutely. Look, much respect to Kevin Johnson, but no. Like you don't want him consistently on the field right now. You don't want that. He's an excellent depth player, and he's a guy that showed some spark, as a nickel with Cleveland last year. But you talk about long-term help, right? Jackrabbit Jenkins is not getting younger. You probably have 2-3 more years with him. Christian Fulton is still, developing. You absolutely need to have – you could never have too many corners, never have too many good corners. So absolutely, first 3 rounds, yeah, without a doubt, they definitely need to consider a corner for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I picked a corner as my first-round pick. But Elliot texted the text line and said, y'all talked about guys with that dog in them. Have you seen Kadarius Toney with the ball in his hands?
Yeah. I've seen him. I actually posted some video of him. I've seen him. I just like Elijah Moore better. You know what I mean? I like Amari Rodgers better. I think they're better slot receivers and they're more NFL ready. Toney is a guy that I picture him as a gadget guy. He actually reminds me of Laviska Shenault. A guy that you could just use all over the place, which, by the way, Amari Rodgers and Elijah Moore can line up in the backfield too, but that's besides the point. But he's someone that I picture as more of a playmaker, and you just use him everywhere.
How would you rank the receivers in that regard? Okay, let's say Elijah Moore, Toney, Bateman, Rondale Moore, and I'm trying to think of who else is in that group. Like, is Terrence Marshall kind of grouped in that?
Yeah.
How would you look at each one of those guys as far as Titans fits are concerned?
It's really interesting because all of them, people look at Terrence Marshall and think he's just an outside receiver. He could play the slot. So I like the versatility of these guys that you mentioned. I would go Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, Terrence Marshall, Toney, and then Rondale Moore.
Oof. I love Rondale Moore.
Oh. I like him a lot. I talked to him, and the Titans have shown a lot of interest in him. But for me, I like guys that I don't picture him as someone, I don't envision him as a guy you put on the outside that could really do what he needs to do on the outside. All the other 4, they're inside and outside guys.
Mark from Clarksville asked, would you be okay if the Titans drop back and get an extra pick in the 2nd or 3rd round?
Hey, I wouldn't mind it because that means I don't have to write about anybody on Thursday. So, hey, listen, for me,
TD gets the day off.
Look, listen, and that's the thing I want to make clear. Like, even though I show a lot of emotion and talk, I don't have a horse in the race. So, whatever the Titans do, my checks are still going to cash, thank God. So, whatever it doesn't I don't mind whatever they do.
And Sonny asked, do you think Seth Williams out of Auburn could be a good fit for the Titans?
Chris Sanders brings him up every single week. He talks about Seth Williams at all.
Yeah, big body. I will say this, J.C. Horn put hands on him and threw him like I don't know. It wasn't right what he did to him. But, yeah, Seth Williams I think is a big receiver. He's strictly on the outside, but he's someone that, I think could work the middle of the field very well. I would picture him more as a Z. But 3rd round, 4th round, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
I'm sorry, TD.
I think Cornell Powell is better though, in my opinion.
I think what's crazy about wide receiver and all these positions are, I know all the 1st round targets and the guys that may go into the 2nd round and even the 3rd round, but I still think that you need the Jayon Browns in the 5th round. Mm-hmm. You need this team. I believe it would really help the 2021 Titans if Larrell Murchison becomes somebody that they can count on as a rotational defensive lineman. And he was a 5th-round pick last year in the draft. Just like how Amani Hooker was a 4th-round pick. Mm-hmm. We weren't talking about Amani Hooker like that, but he's got dog in him. He can play. Mm-hmm. And I looked at this draft, and I'm wondering, we talk about receiver and corner and the needs and tackle, and I wonder – are there going to be some dudes, day 3, that could be a factor, for this team, maybe in the long-term planning?
Absolutely. I mentioned DJ Daniels, right? I think a guy like Keith Taylor. You're talking about corners. Keith Taylor out of Washington. I think he's someone. I mean, there's a bunch of corners. This draft is deep at the cornerback position, and it's deep at receiver too. K. Johnson. Let's say they don't get one of the guys that they wanted. In the 1st or 2nd round, 3rd round, K. Johnson is someone that out of South Dakota State. People are saying I told him he reminds me of Doug Baldwin. right? And he has heard that, but a lot of people are saying Tyler Lockett, like that style of player. So that's another one. Watch the Minnesota game against Ben Kajus. I could never pronounce his last name. The corner out of Minnesota, Benjamin St. Juice. He's someone that, a lot of people are high on. He was at the Senior Bowl. Kay Johnson had a good game against him. So that's another example of a guy. I mean, you could keep going and going and going. There are late-round options. Marvin Wilson, you want someone that will, be a versatile defensive lineman. He'll probably be there, at the top of day 3. That's another one out of Florida State.
TD, as always, the Power Hour flew by today.
Yeah.
I'm going to give away a pair of tickets here, or excuse me, a family 4-pack right now to caller 5-615-737-1025. You win a family 4-pack of tickets to all 3 games of the Music City Diamond Classic. It's Lane College versus Tuskegee University,
nice.
Institutions of the HBCU this weekend at First Horizon Park. And so be caller 5-615-737-1025. You'll win those. TD, your last thought before you head out of here. What did you think about Eddie George taking the TSU job and what that means not only for the HBCU community, but also I think for Nashville area college football?
I love the selection. I think he instantly brings excitement just by saying that he's the head coach. And I know if I was a player, and I talked to Chris Sanders about this, if I was a player and that man walks into my house and says he wants me to play for him, I'm gone. Let's do it. Sign me up. So definitely, I think it's a great move. It's a great move for HBCU. ESPN, has done a great job of covering the game. Can get a little bit better as far as showing more games. And I think Eddie George, the fanfare and the excitement that he brings will make that happen for sure. Before I get out of here, though, and I wanted to get with you about it a little bit earlier. You keep mentioning Jadeveon Clowney and not being a good run defender. Listen, I'm just going to tell you this, Jared. Watch the film, okay? Because you mentioned this Dalvin Cook game. He had 112 yards that had nothing to do with Clowney. You mentioned the James Robinson game. He had 56 yards that had nothing to do with Clowney. So be careful what you say. I know you may not like the guy, but he is a good run defender, a very good one at that.
I just don't think I don't think that you sign Clowney and then are the Browns Super Bowl contenders because they signed Clowney? That's where
He's another piece to the puzzle. They're not saying that he, because of him, they're saying another piece of the puzzle. That's all. That's all.
Oh, TD, as always, man. Hey, TD's going to be with us again 2 weeks from today. We'll be at Third and Home. Caroline and I will be there. TD, Chris Sanders, Mark Howard, the best Titans-focused draft coverage, and I don't even say that. I mean, I'm taking myself out of it when I'm talking about the Titans coverage we're going to have for the draft on Thursday night. And TD is the guru of the group, although, I mean, there's nothing to say about the other 2 guys as well. But really looking forward to it. TD, we'll talk.
Let's go.
As always, Turron Davenport joining us on the program. And I said this at the top, talking about the draft coverage. I don't take lightly that Titans targets position. Anybody can put together a mock draft. Anybody can say, oh, here's who they should draft. Here's what they should do. But I only trust the guys that actually know what they're talking about to sit there and lay it down for me all throughout the course of the night. Obviously, I think we all trust Floyd, to do that the way he did it. I trust TD, and I think TD is going to do a fantastic job with it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next, something I think TD's going to hate. A general manager, everybody is unsure of something that we think we know. And an NFL general manager says it is pretty much locked up and explains why. And now, I don't hate it as much anymore. I'll explain next. Stillman & Company. We are delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman & Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. Big game for the Predators tonight. Terry Crisp in 25 minutes. Pregame in less than an hour. Puck drop 6 o'clock. Early start tonight at Carolina. Division leading Carolina. Caroline Fenton is with us. And one thing I've learned working with Caroline now for, 2.5 weeks? Yeah, okay. Caroline does not like the idea of Mac Jones with the 3rd overall pick to San Francisco. That much I know. I feel very comfortable that you do not like the idea of Mac Jones with the 3rd overall pick to San Francisco.
I don't like the idea of Mac Jones getting picked 3rd. The idea of him going to San Francisco makes sense. I just don't like the idea of Mac Jones being the 3rd best player in this draft.
Okay, so everybody seems to be all worked up about Mac Jones with that 3rd pick, because a lot of people, myself included, don't think Mac Jones is the 3rd best player in the draft, don't think that Mac Jones is the 3rd best quarterback in the draft, and don't think that Mac Jones is better than Justin Fields. I don't think he's better than Justin Fields. I also was never a huge Justin Fields fan, so I'm not on the, everybody who criticizes Justin Fields has, an issue. Like, I understand the criticism of Justin Fields. But I was reading in The Athletic, Mike Sando, who's very well connected, was at ESPN for a long time before going to The Athletic, and does that quarterback tiers every year where he talks to general managers and coaches and executives. He talked to an active NFL general manager who is picking way outside of the top 10. And he asked the GM to predict what all would happen with the top 10 picks. And the GM does predict Mac Jones to Alabama. Here's what he writes. Here's what he says. Quote, "I'm confident Mac Jones is Kyle's guy," the GM said. Another exec thought the 49ers were open to more than one quarterback in this slot and that Lance made the most sense. But going back to the idea of what the general manager said, he goes, quote, "Kyle and his dad went along with it in reference to picking RG3 in Washington, but they still drafted Kirk Cousins in the 4th round, and all along they thought Cousins was better. Kyle comes to San Francisco, and who does he want? Cousins. In the end, he wants Cousins, and he sees Mac Jones having some of the same qualities. He doesn't fall in love with the physical traits." And then I thought about it. Everybody keeps talking about why Justin Fields would be a better fit for Kyle Shanahan than Mac Jones would be. And Justin Fields can run better. Justin Fields can throw better. Justin Fields is more physically gifted. But that GM says, it doesn't really matter much to Kyle Shanahan. And I thought back to the Shanahan system. The Shanahan system. Every team in the league is trying to hire a Shanahan system coach. We think back to Mike Shanahan in Washington. We've got Kyle Shanahan in Atlanta, San Francisco. We've got Sean McVay in Los Angeles. We've got Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. We've got Arthur Smith, again, all part of the same system in Atlanta. We've got Todd Downing here. This team runs this system. How many mobile quarterbacks have those guys had? How much has running mattered? Yeah, Ryan Tannehill can run a little bit, but nobody thinks that Ryan Tannehill is a mobile quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo's not mobile. Jared Goff's not mobile. Aaron Rodgers can move a little bit, but he's not mobile. Those guys, they don't want a mobile quarterback. They don't even want a guy who improvises. Matt LaFleur doesn't want Aaron Rodgers to improvise. He wants him to improvise less. How many mobile quarterbacks has the Shanahan tree recently coached? And there's one person that comes to mind. Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota won the Heisman Trophy. Marcus Mariota was the 2nd overall pick in the draft. Marcus Mariota went to a playoff game and won a playoff game before he entered into the Shanahan system. And he was never the same the day that Matt LaFleur showed up. You can argue that the reason it didn't work out for Marcus is not because he's mobile. It's because it just didn't work. It's because maybe Marcus didn't have what it took to be the leader of the team. It could be because Marcus was getting his elbow banged around so much and was injured before he entered this system that he was never really 100%. He always was a little gun shy. You could have said that. You could say Marcus doesn't have the personality to be a star quarterback. You could say Marcus can't throw the ball well enough to be a star quarterback. But Marcus was pretty well received coming out. The throwing mechanics, the ability, the accuracy, all kind of seemed to be pointing in the right direction when Mariota was a draft prospect. Go back and look at the highlights of Marcus in 2016 with the Titans. In his second year in the league, the 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, the year he had. Look at him in the Shanahan system. Look at him under LaFleur. Look at him for the month that he was the starting quarterback under Arthur Smith. It didn't work. So people can tell you, hey, Justin Fields is better than Mac Jones. Okay. San Francisco might think that Justin Fields is better than Mac Jones. But is that what the Shanahan system does? Is that what those guys do? Did you notice the team they jumped in the draft? They didn't jump ahead of the New York Jets in order to draft the quarterback they wanted. They didn't try to go to the Jets to number 2 to get Zach Wilson. They jumped Atlanta at 4. And you're thinking, why does that matter that they jumped Atlanta at 4? Because don't you think Mac Jones would have been available if they had swapped with the Bengals at 5 and wouldn't have had to give up what they gave up to the Dolphins? In fact, moving from 12 to 3 cost them 2 other first-round picks. When the Dolphins moved from 12 to 6, it cost them 1 other first-round pick. So why didn't they just call the Eagles and move to 6 and draft Mac Jones? And I'll tell you why. Because I think Shanahan is worried that Arthur Smith, a Shanahan tree coach, would take Mac Jones at 4. What's the comparison we hear a lot about Mac Jones? We hear that the Mac Jones comparison is, he's a lot like Matt Ryan was for Shanahan in Atlanta. Who's Arthur Smith got right now? Don't you think you would love the ability if you were the Falcons? And let's say it's a fair comp, Mac Jones to Matt Ryan. Don't you think you would love to take Mac Jones, sit him on the bench, have Matt Ryan be the quarterback, and Mac Jones learns from Matt Ryan? And there's no pressure to play Mac Jones, and there's no shame if you lose with Matt Ryan, because you can always say, hey, eventually Mac's the guy. Shanahan may think Fields is better. My whole point is he doesn't think Fields is better for him. He's convinced Jones is what he wants. He wants Cousins. He wants Ryan. He wants Jones. So he trades up to guarantee he gets him, even if he's not as good as the other guy. But it's good for him. It's kind of like dating, right? Like nobody ever says, go get the best girl or guy. They say, go get the best girl or guy for you. And if it's the best girl or guy for you, wouldn't you try to put everything you had into it to get that person, to be with that person? That's what Shanahan did. He identified Mac Jones as the best quarterback for him and then did what it took to make sure he gets him. I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying I do it. I'm just saying that's what I think he's doing. When a general manager says, no, Mac's the guy. He's the Cousins guy that Shanahan wants. Okay? Now it's like I understand it more, Caroline.
Yeah, and I thought, well, Mac Jones can be a mobile quarterback. Like, Mac Jones can be a dual threat. And then I looked up his stats from this past season. 14 rushing yards. 14 rushing yards. And I don't think I realized just how comfortable Mac Jones was just sitting back and throwing the ball. 14 rushing yards to 4,500 passing yards. And of course, he's a quarterback. He's going to have a significant amount of passing yards. But just when you compare that to Justin Fields, who has 383 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns in 10 games.
Well, I think part of it, too, is Nick Saban, Mac Jones was a backup quarterback at Alabama. And just like
Which isn't a bad thing to be a backup quarterback at Alabama.
It's not, but just like Jacob Coker's a backup quarterback at Alabama. He won a national title because he turned around and gave the ball to Derrick Henry 50 times a game. Mac Jones was a backup. I don't even think Mac Jones was in their long-term plans at Alabama. I could be wrong. But like Nick Saban does not want a coach freestyling. I don't think Saban felt comfortable with Tua. Because remember, Tua would run around and then chuck the ball down the field. I don't think Saban liked that. Some coaches cannot do the improv. Andy Reid can do it with Patrick Mahomes. You can't coach Patrick Mahomes if you're going to try to get him to be a robot like Sean McVay wants Matthew Stafford to be. You can't do it. I don't know enough about Justin Fields to say whether Fields could do that or not. I feel comfortable in saying Mac Jones wouldn't have been put in the Alabama lineup if he wasn't going to do exactly what Steve Sarkisian and Nick Saban told him to do. And I think that's what Shanahan wants. So the more I think about the mobile quarterbacks, and everybody said, well, hey, Fields is way freaking better than Jones. He might be. Shanahan might know that, and it still may not matter to him. And think about the Shanahan system. They didn't trade all those first-round picks in L.A. to get a guy who's mobile. They got Matthew Stafford. They didn't trade away that second-round pick to New England to get a guy who's mobile. They got Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, they don't want they do not want the mobile quarterback in the Shanahan system. Matt LaFleur tried it with the RPOs with Mariota. Mariota got hurt, and I think maybe Mariota and RG3 scared them away from the physical gifts of the quarterback.
I've seen a lot of mock drafts mocking Justin Fields to Atlanta. And, of course, these aren't Bible, but it's just interesting to see. Do you think that same logic that you're applying Mac Jones to the 49ers, do you think that they would apply that same logic with Fields to the Falcons?
I think, what did we see after San Francisco moved up? We saw the chatter was Atlanta's willing to deal number 4. I wonder if that is a smokescreen. I wonder if that is hey, seriously, you can get the best player in the draft who's not a quarterback if you want this pick. Maybe it's a message to the Dolphins. Hey, move up to 4, and you'll get who you want. Cincinnati won't take it. So if you want Kyle Pitts, if you want Jamar Chase, if you want Penei Sewell, you'll get that guy before Joe Burrow can convince them to draft Jamar Chase, before they realize the need at left tackle and they draft Penei Sewell to be their next left tackle for 10 years. But, yeah, I think that's a good point. Is Atlanta in on Fields? I don't know. But it did kind of make sense that we didn't hear much out of Atlanta about trading the pick until after San Francisco moved ahead of them. So maybe that was the whole plan. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, it's a big game tonight with Carolina. It's never been big before with the Preds, like a big game with Carolina. And I think we need to start changing how we feel about Carolina and how we watch tonight's game. I'll explain next. Right here on Stillman and Company. Hey, T-Mobile and ESPN 1025 The Game have teamed up to give away a hockey home gating party. Text the word goalie. You heard that right there. Text the word goalie to 615-737-1025 now and enter for a chance to win a Dos Equis prize pack, which includes a case of beer, dessert from Nothing Bundt Cakes, a T-Mobile prize pack, and food provided by 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. You must be 21 or older to enter. Stillman and Company's live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com, and we are delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game, and we're streaming on the Game Nashville app.
Coach, this is a Carolina team certainly at the top of the division, but obviously we know what your team has been able to do lately as well. What is important tonight in this one, and how do you keep things going against this club here? Another test against one of the top teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great challenge for our group. I think that Carolina, top 5 team in the league, they're top of the Central Division right now. And, they're very competitive. I mean, they're a group that, they're competitive in their lineup. They play fast. You can tell they all play on the same page with how they want to play tactically. So for us, we know it's going to be a speed game. There has to be a lot of, competitiveness and work ethic for us. And, we think that this is a good test. We haven't beat them yet this year. I think we're 0-3 against Carolina. So, we need to make sure that we're continuing to build our game and continue to get wins, but, really have a strong focus level on this 2-game set of getting to our game to a higher level.
Stillman and Company delivered by TriStar moving tonight. Carolina, Terry Crisp in about, 5-6 minutes will join us on the program. Carolina, I always would joke around about, there's an article about this show on Barrett Sports Media, and it was talking about the Predators. And, I think there are people in this town that cover sports that are generalists, talking heads, that just ignore the Predators. They think it doesn't matter. I don't know why they think it doesn't matter. The audience has shown this show has been built a lot on the Titans and the Predators, and we've been rather successful. And we embrace the Predators, and we talk about it all the time. But some people just literally ignore it. Like either they don't know how to talk it or they won't talk it, or they're told not to talk it. I don't know. And it's funny because I was asked a question about, people would say, like in Nashville, how do you talk about the Predators every day? And I think I had a line in there, Caroline, I don't know if you liked it, where I said, you may wear khakis and jeans all the time, but if you work at Lululemon, you better learn how to sell yoga pants.
I saw that.
And
it's true.
So, I look at it like, hey, if the fans are going to invest 3 hours of their time watching the game tonight, and I think a lot of you are, then we might as well figure out enough about it to be able to talk about it. And I see all the data. I see all the info. I know how much you all care about the Predators. But I would always joke back in the day about, okay, what do you do for like a Thursday night game against Calgary? How do you drum up, interest in that game on the air? And Carolina is one of the teams I would throw in there that, a Thursday night against Carolina in normal times, no. This is a big game. And not only is it a big game, I think Carolina is a team we need to start getting to know. When you were going back and forth in the playoffs with Chicago, everybody knew about Taves and Kane and Keith and Seabrook and Hjalmarsson and Hossa and Crawford, and you knew about them because you played them all the time. You played them in the playoffs. When you played Winnipeg, the year that you were the 2 best teams in the league, we knew all about Line and Wheeler and Bufflin and Hellebuck. And those rivalries developed when they played Chicago. In 2018, that was when I think all of us got a first, a glimpse of McKinnon and Rantanen and Landeskog and that group and say, they'll be pretty good in a couple of years. Right now, they're probably the best team in the league. And I look at Carolina, and they're probably right in that tier. Greg Wyshynski just wrote at ESPN+. They're in that tier right below the juggernauts, right below Tampa and Washington and those kind of teams. But make no mistake, they're good. Sebastian Aho is good. Teravainen is good. They were in the Eastern Conference Final in 2018. I know you've only played them 3 times this year. Once was the 3rd game of the season. Get to know the Carolina Hurricanes. Keep saying Panthers, Florida. Get to know the Carolina Hurricanes. Just like you're kind of starting to get to know Tampa Bay a little bit. Stamkos, Kucherov, Hedman, Point, Barkov, Vasilevsky. Get to know Carolina tonight, because right now, if the playoffs were today, that would be your opponent in the first round. You would get the Carolina Hurricanes. So I know that maybe some people hear tonight, Preds, Carolina, and you're like, okay, it's Carolina. Okay, whatever. Just like you would have said in a normal year. Carolina, Montreal, Toronto, Calgary. The teams that are whatever. That plays San Jose okay, whatever. It's not Chicago. It's not Winnipeg. It's not Pittsburgh. It's not Washington. No, trust me. It's a big one tonight. Get to know Carolina. Get to know them tonight. And by the way, the one thing I will say, if they go toe-to-toe with these guys and they beat them, that is a feather in the cap tonight.
Right, and it's not just big because it's Carolina. I mean, the timeline right now is crunch time. It's a very, very important time. You have to get those points, and you have to have that certain mindset going into the playoffs. So, yeah, it's Carolina, maybe a team that the Predators would have ignored or maybe fans would have just thrown off before. But, I mean, at this point in the season, it doesn't matter who you're playing. You have to win.
Terry Crisp will join us next. By the way, I got ESPN Plus. I believe that means that I can get, I'm not sure, but I think that means tonight I can also watch Dallas play Columbus. I think that game is on ESPN Plus. I could be wrong. I don't know. I mean, I'll be focused on the Preds game. 615-737-1025. Crispy joins us coming up next. Smashville Live. Boy, they had a great one last night with Lindsay and Colin Wilson and that crew. Smashville Live is every Wednesday night right here on ESPN 1025 The Game, featuring former Preds players, current Preds players, and other special guests. You can also watch the show online via 1025 The Game's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and TheGameNashville.com. Smashville Live is brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka, Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, and Red Spirits and Wine in Bellevue. To view or listen to past shows, go to TheGameNashville.com/Smashville Live. Crispy next. Stillman and Company tonight, a big one against Carolina. I started the show off on this, but the Predators right now, 62% chance to make the playoffs. They are expected to finish with 63 points on the season. Dallas is expected to finish with 61. That is one game difference. Every game matters. Terry Crisp joins us now in the program. Of course, post games, intermissions on Bally Sports. Crispy, let's start with this. What do we make about this run the Predators are on and kind of the little push of encouragement David Poile gave them on Monday by not shipping anybody out at the trade deadline?
You know what? It tells me, what it really shows me still is the fact that the team believes in themselves. The coaching staff have really got them believing in themselves and listening to the coaching staff for a change now and doing what they've been asking for the last month and a half or 2 months. And, of course, David Poile has always been a loyal person and family team first, or team, yeah. And he doesn't do knee-jerk decisions, David, mostly. So when they were thinking about it, you know, I'd love to have heard the backroom stories of just before leading up to the draft as to who was offering what for on our team and who was wanting to take who. And the nice part about that whole thing when it finally came down was that David Poile was in a position finally, the team put him in, where he could make his own decisions. He didn't have to be forced into something he didn't want to do or didn't believe in. And that's what I liked when the trading deadline was over. Hey, it's easy to make trades. I mean, you can move guys around like on a checkerboard or whatever and take your chances it's going to turn out or not. But to stay with them and to see what they're doing right now, I think they made the right move. No, in fact, I feel firmly they did. And why I really like it is because the young kids are doing it, are up-and-comers. Without a lot of the veterans in the lineup, these kids are showing, like I said the last time, they're showing energy. They got a lot of jump to them. I mean, Jeannot comes in, Olivier comes in, Trennan comes in, Sisson jumps up, Tolvanen comes of age. Go on down the line. I like the makeup of our hockey club now.
What do you think about Tuesday night, Crispy? I mean, to think about this team and the encouragement they got Monday playing that Tampa Bay team, and I know they weren't playing their starting goalie, and I know Stamkos was out, but I mean that's the defending champions who you may see in the first round. And it wasn't one of those games we've talked about where Saros had to just play out of his mind. He didn't need to. That game was tilted totally towards Tampa Bay's end, maybe the most impressive win of the year. What did you make of it?
I liked it. But it showed to me also was the fact that they weren't resting on their laurels. They weren't standing around patting themselves in the back and, oh boy, we missed the trade time. We're still here. We're okay. We're not going anywhere. That wasn't on their minds. Their minds were that they needed the points. And they needed one of the best teams to go out against Tampa Bay to do it against. And they did it in style. I mean, they skated, they forechecked, they went to the net, and they were getting their shots on net. They were coming back hard to help out in our defensive zone. And the biggest thing I like is we were controlling the neutral zone. On a lot of games, you've heard the coaches say that the neutral zone has been our battle zone, that we couldn't get through it. And we couldn't stop them coming the other way through it. Now we're settling down. Now we're starting to control and make plays both ways in the neutral zone. So overall as a team, yeah, they're starting to gel. But again, the job is only half done. Now we have to see. Now we're going to come into the litmus test coming down this stretch run. Next two games, Carolina, which I consider, in my mind, the best of the top three between Florida and Tampa and the team. They got speed, they got skill, they got goaltending, and they're going to come at you in waves. So these next two games are going to tell us a lot.
Well, it's funny you transitioned to that for me because I started today's show talking about tonight's game. And it was the same thing I just brought up. Right now, according to Money Puck, the Predators are expected to finish literally 2 points ahead of Dallas. Dallas gets Columbus for 2 and then 4 with Detroit. I mean, I'm not saying tonight's a must-win, but I do think that we're going to learn both, hey, how do they match up with a team as good as Carolina, and you're going to need the win. You're going to need the points because Dallas is going to reel off some wins, and Dallas is not that far behind you, Crispy. I think tonight's game may be one of the most underrated for how big it is.
You know what? In a lot of people's it might be, but I can tell you right now, not in the coach's mind, sure hasn't been. They've looked at this schedule, and once we're done with Carolina, with 2 games with them, which are going to be just like royal battles, we got to go 3 against Chicago. And to me, those 3 are going to be just as important as these first 2. The first 2 here with Carolina is going to prove to us how good or how close we are to running with the big dogs. If it was just a mirage, or are we that good that we can hang in there? And when that's over, Chicago, and they're the ones on our tail now. Chicago scares me more than Dallas right now, I'll tell you. They do. So the 3 games against Chicago, to me, is going to be just as important as these 2 against Carolina.
Crispy, last Thursday we talked, and then the Predators played Detroit. And there was that interesting kind of, the first period I almost fell asleep. The second period, we had that interesting moment where they hit Matt Benning, and Matthew Olivier came to his defense, and they reviewed the penalty, and they basically, almost matched Olivier out of the game. They dropped the penalty from a major to a minor. John Hines got a penalty. I'm not sure I can remember seeing a Preds coach do that recently. John Hines gets a penalty. They kill it off, and then they smoke Detroit. I thought that was a big moment. I thought that was a big moment where the team rallied together and they rallied behind the coach and they killed off the penalty and the coach stood up for the team. What did you think of that, and how much of that do you feel right now with this group?
Well said, Stiller. I like what you just said. That whole thing you just said, I totally concur with you, and it is. It's a good feeling. And when I saw Olivia, because I've seen too many of our guys get smoked, like when Yossi got smoked and Harvey's got smoked, no retaliation. Nobody said, they all just looked around and said, oh, well, he'll be okay. No, Olivia doesn't stand for that. Trennan doesn't. I bet you Jeannot will not either. These are the guys we've been lacking. This is what we've been looking for all along. And when they fit it into our hockey club, then the other guys picked it up. Now Sissons is banging everything in sight. And Benning always has been. He's not that big, but he's been doing his best. And then when Coach Hines, and you know what? He had every right to lose his temper on the bench. And when you do it, you do it in the heat of the moment. As a coach, I've known that. You're sort of mad at yourself afterwards. But at the time, you felt something had to be done. Something needed because we were getting taken to the woodshed by the officials or whatever. And then the guys, you're right. They just pulled on the rope all in the same direction, just took it away from Detroit from the rest of that game. But that's the whole feeling that's permeating now through this club. In their dressing room, you hear them talking. You see them when they come out and start to play. They now feel that they're a team, that they've come together, that the system that they've all been preaching and coaching and trying to teach has fell into place. It's proven that it's successful. Okay, boys, let's take it from here and go.
Crispy is our guest, Terry Crisp. Crispy, what are some matchups tonight that you're going to be watching and focused on? Because, again, Carolina, I was saying this in the last segment, it may not feel like Winnipeg, it may not feel like Chicago, it may not feel like Colorado or St. Louis, but they are right now, given the circumstances, they are our Winnipegs and St. Louis's. And tonight they got great players over there at Carolina. What do you think of tonight's game and kind of the matchup?
They got speed. They got speed to burn. They're one of the best transition games. We've talked about the Lightning being a good transition team. This team is one of the best at it. They're quick, they're fast, and suddenly you're in their defensive zone. Before you realize it, they've made 1 or 2 plays, and they're coming. And you know what they'll be? Odd man rushes. They'll pick up on 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s. Hell, they'll have 4-on-2s because their defense will jump up in the rush. They're that fast and that quick, and they're skilled. I mean, you got Aho, you've got Trocheck, you got Stahl, Svechnikov, who we always ignore, but he's just as deadly as any of them out there. Their defense core is solid. On Hamilton, tonight I was going over, and I said, you got Hamilton and Yossi tonight. I'm picturing going head-to-head. Both are team leaders on their team from the back end, on the forend, and whatever. The Hurricanes are well coached. Rod Brindamore is a solid coach out there, and they can play any way you want. They can play speed. They can play tough with you. They can score goals against you. Yeah, I said it when we started. This is a good litmus test for our hockey club.
Terry Crisp, we will see you very shortly on the pregame show on Bally Sports. Crispy, always good to talk to you. Take care.
Thanks, Giller. Stay safe, eh?
Yep, always. Just for you, Terry Crisp, joining us on the program as he does on every Thursday at this time. Okay, it's time to put the money out. It's time for Caroline's.
Get in on the action. Put the money on the mahogany. What's on tap on the sports books? It's time to break it all down with Caroline's. here on Stillman and Company
on ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
I would like to thank the New York Mets yesterday for just totally making us look like morons as we took Zach Wheeler and the Phillies, and then they got lit up. But there's only so much you can do with it. Do we have tonight's Preds game? Can we bet on tonight's Preds game in Carolines?
Of course. And I actually have a bit of a hockey-themed Carolines tonight in honor of the big game.
Okay.
And one of my good friends is a Mets fan. He texted me last night, how's that Philly pick working out for you?
Yeah, not good.
I was like, oh, wait, what? Me? I didn't pick the Phillies, not me. But tonight I'm going to take the Preds plus 1.5.
Okay, 1.5's the number. You heard Crispy talk about how good Carolina is. And I think that, they're really good. I think that the Preds have got to get one of the two. And I think it's going to be hard. I think tonight's going to be a close game. I'm going to take Carolina minus 1.5. And here's why. I think it's a one-goal game. I think Carolina wins 2-1, but then they get an empty netter to win 3-1 as the final. So I think that this game tonight is going to be neck and neck. And the roster the Preds are putting out, they're not putting out Forsberg right now. They're not putting out Duchesne. They're not putting out Fabro. They're not putting out Tolvanen. They're not putting out Tomasino. They just can't right now. If they had those guys, then I'd really want to see them play Carolina because Crispy's right. It is a legitimate possible first-round matchup.
Yeah, I agree. And I think plus 1.5 because I think that if the Preds do happen to lose, I don't think it'll be by much. And if they do happen to win, I also don't think it'll be by much. I agree. I think it'll be very neck and neck.
Oh, my God. It'd be nice to get this one, though. And then Thursday,
it would be nice to get this
Saturday,
one.
we can kick our feet up. And
chill a little bit on Saturday.
Enjoy Saturday.
Yes. And if it's a win, then it's great. Even better. Cherry on top. Also, Islanders-Bruins tonight. I'm going to take the Islanders' money line. They're coming in with a 3-day break. Their goaltending percentage is currently .922. Like that. And the Bruins are coming off of a shootout win versus the Sabres. So the fact that the Bruins went to a shootout with the Sabres, one of the worst teams in the league, if not the worst, then I feel very good about the Islanders' shot. Islanders have also beaten the Bruins all 5 meetings this season. So I'm taking the Islanders' money line.
The Bruins remind me a lot of the 2019 Preds, where we knew, they were in the Cup final 2 seasons prior. There was something about that group that was still there. But, this Boston team, they still have Pasternak and Bergeron and Marchand and Krejci and McAvoy and Tuukka Rask, although he's been out. They've been playing the Swayman kid, their rookie goalie that they love a lot. They've been playing him. The Islanders, I think, are a legitimate contender.
The Bruins also have Taylor Hall.
Yeah, but I can't. The Jadavian Clowney of the NHL. I'll take the Bruins just to be different. I'll take the Bruins minus 120. Swayman's playing pretty well, but there's something about the Bruins that just doesn't feel right. Just doesn't seem right with them.
They're not quite vibing.
No, they are not vibing. They are not the Predators who are vibing.
I also have Sabres Capitals. I'm taking Caps minus 1.5. They're 3-0 in their last 3. They've won 14 and lost only 5 on home ice. Sabres are 6-12 on the road. And the Caps have beaten the Sabres 6 times this year. Half of those 6 times by multiple goals. The Caps are just great.
Caps at home minus 355. Doesn't seem like you're going to make a lot of money from that, but
I'm taking a minus 1.5.
It does feel like a pretty sure bet, though.
Yeah.
I'll take the Capitals money line. And those are Carolines. There we go. Coming up next, Predators game day. You heard right there. I guess I'm picking Carolina tonight. But maybe it's just so I don't set myself up. By the way, I got ESPN Plus, so it's great because this game starts at 6. And then Stars and Blue Jackets is on ESPN Plus tonight at 7:30. So I can watch the end of the Preds game and then probably the second and third periods of Dallas and Columbus. How nice would it be if the Predators get a win tonight against Carolina, that really good Carolina team, and then Dallas, poops their pants and loses to Columbus?
Would you be ready to say that the playoffs are good and locked at that point?
No.
Okay.
No. Money pucks. Again, 63 points expectation for the Predators, 61 points for Dallas. I don't feel safe about anything there. 615-737-1025, Predators game day, presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville, is next. One of the things I love about betting on basketball with the FanDuel Sportsbook app, my official sportsbook app, is I'm always finding new player props or game props I like. What's cool about FanDuel Sportsbook is you can combine these props with other bets from the same game to score an even bigger payout. It's called a same-game parlay bet, and you can only find them on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Money line, point spread, first basket scorer, player points, they've got it all. If you haven't tried FanDuel Sportsbook yet, new users get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. Just place a bet, and FanDuel will refund you up to $1,000 in site credit if you don't win. And right now, new and existing users get up to $25 in site credit back each day if your parlay falls one leg short with same-game parlay insurance. You heard that right. Every single day. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and use our promo code JGM at signup. That's FanDuel Sportsbook app, promo code JGM. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. Refund issue is non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $25. Terms apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. For problem gambling support, call 1-800-889-9789.
It's Hockey Night in Smashville.
Deflects back for Duchesne. His shot stopped, and the score!
What are the keys to victory tonight? What's being said in the locker room? Where do the Preds reside in the Central Division standings? Jared Stillman has the latest now. With Preds Game Day on Stillman and Company. Brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. This is Smashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Predators Game Day is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. The Nashville Predators 24-19-1, good for 49 points on the road. At the Carolina Hurricanes 27-10-4, good for 58 points, and they are in first place in the Central Division. Why is this a big deal? Because tonight the Columbus Blue Jackets play the Dallas Stars. The Detroit Red Wings play the Chicago Blackhawks. If you're a scoreboard watcher, and I am, you need to be rooting for Columbus and for Detroit, the two worst teams in the division. We take a look at the standings. The Hurricanes in first place with 58 points. Tampa Bay right behind them, 58 points. And Carolina right there with 58 points. The Predators are in fourth place with 49 points. The Blackhawks have a game in hand. They're 4 points behind at 45. And the Stars with 3 games in hand are 7 points behind with 42. John Hines, as we have the coaches taking a look at the Carolina Hurricanes getting set for them tonight. Here's what he said.
It's a great challenge for our group. I think that Carolina, top 5 team in the league, they're top of the Central Division right now. And, they're very competitive. I mean, they're a group that, they're competitive in their lineup. They play fast. You can tell they all play on the same page with how they want to play tactically. So for us, we know it's going to be a speed game. There has to be a lot of, competitiveness and work ethic for us. And, we think that this is a good test. We haven't beat them yet this year. I think we're 0-3 against Carolina. So, we need to make sure that we're continuing to build our game and continue to get wins, but, really have a strong focus level on this 2-game set of getting to our game to a higher level.
Meanwhile, roster news for the Predators. They've recalled forwards Tanner Jeannot and Rem Pitlick from the taxi squad. Ellie Tolvanen, obviously he's out. Philip Tomasino, who I meant to say. Tomasino is on the taxi squad, will not play tonight. Same lineup as Tampa Bay, but Hines said that there is a chance that we will see Tomasino on this road trip. He is the Predators' number 1 prospect. Caroline Fenton, what are you watching for tonight as the Predators take on the Carolina Hurricanes right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game?
I think I need to see what I saw against Tampa Bay in that first game. If there is a loss, I need to see, okay, yes, it was a loss, but did they play well? Did they look cohesive as a team?
I thought Crispy brought up an interesting point when he said that he thinks that Carolina is the best of the 3 teams.
There's a point to be made.
Oh, sure. Talking about Tampa Bay, Florida, Carolina. I think there's probably something to that. I mean, again, this is a team that was in the Eastern Conference Final just a year and a half ago or 2 years ago or whatever. I mean, they are not a bad team, and they've got good players. Aho, Teravainen, Dougie Hamilton. Like, they're a good team, and Peter Mrazek, and I don't know if he's in tonight, but he has been Preds kryptonite over his career. So tonight, right here, ESPN 102.5, The Game, pregame coverage beginning in about 5 minutes. That's going to do it for us. We are out of here. Caroline, we will be back tomorrow at 2. Full recap of tonight's big game on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. We will see you then. Darren McFarland is coming up next. Preds pregame, and then, of course, the voice of the Nashville Predators, Pete Weber, at 6 o'clock with the call. We'll see you.